Chapter 71. As for Li Hongyuan, who was suspected to be in a very bad condition or even dead, his condition was indeed not very good. The injury was not fake, and the excessive blood loss also caused him to feel a little dizzy. Although he was not in the water, he was still at the riverbank. "Master!" One of the 4 shadow guards by his side, number 9, opened his mouth. He wanted to persuade him to go back, but in the end, he said, "Let this subordinate help you deal with your wound?" If the wound was dealt with, how could he continue acting? Wan was so intelligent, she would definitely be able to see that Li Hongyuan had only taken some pills to stop the pain and bleeding. "How is Wan?" The shadow guard subconsciously reached out to help him, but Li Hongyuan glanced at him. The shadow guard also realized that he had made a stupid mistake. Because of Enjo's excellent medical skills, compared to the other shadow guards, he had the benevolence of a doctor. Another person tugged at him and stepped forward himself. Replying to Master, "Miss Luo is fine. Nanny Gong found her before us and has already confirmed that she should only have some bruises on her body. In addition, because of the shock from rolling down, she has temporarily fallen into a coma. She will wake up very soon and will not affect Master's plan. As for the others, the situation has not been confirmed." After a pause, Miss Luo was in the same carriage as the other girls. The female protector was not in the carriage at that time, so she could not protect Miss Luo. She couldn't help but explain to Granny Gong. Although Granny Gong's master had changed, it was still easy for her master to punish her. After learning about Jingwan's situation, they were actually very surprised. Although they all hoped that Miss Luo's skin was not broken at all. However, although the cliff wasn't very high, the bottom of the cliff was very dangerous. Not to mention the rugged rocks and dense vegetation, there were many areas that had collapsed due to the erosion of the rain. The bottom level was at least 50 to 60 feet high. The second level was less than 10 feet wide and was covered in slippery moss. Below that was the riverbank and rocks. The height of the 2 levels was more than 10 feet. If one was accidentally thrown out of the carriage, it was very likely that one would fall to the bottom. Not to mention being smashed to pieces, there was a high chance that one would die. Including Yuan Fengfei's carriage, there were a total of 3 carriages that fell off the cliff, but there were more people. Among everyone, Jingwan seemed to be the unluckiest to fall to the second level. Moreover, she was less than a palm's width away from the edge. However, she also seemed to be the luckiest to have suffered the lightest injuries. However, it was precisely because of Jingwan's position that these shadow guards were able to easily move her to the riverbank at the bottom, saving them the risk of being discovered before anyone else could find her. As long as their master went there, he would be able to have a perfect encounter. However, it was not a simple matter to take someone away from the lady protector. She was like an old hen protecting her chicks. She almost fought with them. Although Li Hongyuan was still able to divert his attention to plan and kill Jingwan after learning that Jingwan was in trouble, his attention returned to its original place only after confirming that Jingwan was safe. Originally, he had prepared for the worst. If Wan was seriously injured, he did not mind changing his original plan and saving the damsel in distress. However, God was on his side. As for whether Nurse Gong was in the wrong or not, it could be put aside for the time being. He would deal with it later. As for how Li Hongyuan and the others came down from the height of dozens of feet, Li Hongyuan had long been accustomed to preparing for a rainy day. He had already figured out the mountain terrain of White Dragon Temple. He even let the shadow guards go to almost every corner. When they came down from the top, there was a road that could not be called a road. Ordinary people could not walk on it at all. However, after they came down, it was completely destroyed. His plan had to leave enough time for him to be alone with Wan. Li Hongyuan stood up. With injuries all over his body, he walked down the riverbank step by step. Although his pace was not fast, each step was firm, leaving a trail of bloody footprints on the ground. The shadow guards followed behind Li Hongyuan and cleaned up the bloodstains he left behind. It was enough as long as they could create an illusion that their master fell into the river and then went down along the river. The shadow guards looked at their master's back and couldn't help but feel an indescribable emotion. Their master's temperament was sinister, ruthless, and temperamental, but they had a deep respect for him, not only because of his ability to devise strategies and control the world, but also because of his unyielding pride and his ability to do things to the extreme. It was not a short distance to reach the place where Jingwan was now. Not to mention the numerous small bends, there were even 2 big bends. It was not easy for Li Hongyuan, who was getting more and more tired with every step. If he let the shadow guards carry him forward, it was not that they could not move faster, but he would never allow it. Li Hongyuan felt that he was about to reach his limit, but even so, he did not think of anything else. He only thought that he had suffered a big loss this time and must find a way to make up for it from Wan Wan. The more he thought, the more discordant it became. The degree of filth was directly proportional to his perfect face. Fortunately, no one knew. Otherwise, who knows how many people would be stunned, and then, should it be said that he was worthy of being called Jin Qinhuang, who had seen all kinds of beauties. The dizziness became more and more intense, and the scenery in his eyes began to blur. However, the moment Jingwan's figure entered his line of sight, he could no longer see anything else. Step by step, he unwaveringly approached and waded into the water without hesitation. Fortunately, the water in this section was not deep and the current was relatively gentle. However, the river was very wide. The blood that had already dried up, after meeting the water, quickly spread out. Everywhere he passed, there was a pool of blood. Midway, his body uncontrollably staggered twice, drenched in sweat. The shadow guards formed a semicircle around him, fearing that he would fall into the water. Obviously, they still underestimated their master. Li Hongyuan walked to the edge. His consciousness was both fuzzy and clear. This position was enough. He let himself fall down and completely sank into darkness, half of his body submerged by the river. And Jiao hurriedly stepped forward and checked his pulse. He turned back. "You must hurry. If you soak in the water for too long, I'm afraid that Master's life will be in danger." "Then what are you waiting for? Go and wake Miss Luo up." And Jiao hurriedly got up and walked towards Jingwan, who was lying near the edge of the cliff. They naturally couldn't be more familiar with Jingwan, but they didn't understand what was so special about this girl that could make Master do this. If she was a stunning woman, perhaps Master just took a fancy to her beauty. If she was noble and had a strong background, perhaps Master was adding help to seize the throne. However, she was neither. Thinking of her current appearance, such a proud person who didn't even have a scratch on her skin in the past, not to mention the large and small injuries on her body, she was also dying. They couldn't help but have an inexplicable resentment towards Jingwan. "And Zhou, what are you thinking about? Hurry up." Another shadow guard walked in and urged. And Jiao hurriedly took out a small porcelain bottle that he carried with him, unplugged the stopper, and shook it under Jingwan's nose. Jingwan frowned, and a slight sound came out of her mouth. She showed signs of waking up. "Let's go." Pulling in Jiao, they quickly left. If Miss Luo woke up and saw them, then everything Master did would be in vain. The 4 people quickly went away, hiding in the dark and paying attention to the situation here. It was quiet, but Jiao was particularly silent. The shadow guard just now put his hand on his shoulder. "And Jiao, you just have to remember one thing. No matter what Miss Luo is like, she is the person Master has chosen. She will be the future Jin Wangfei, our female master. We can't interfere. What we have to do is to abide by our duties and do whatever Master asks us to do. It's just that I can't accept it for a while when I suddenly saw Master like that. Don't worry, I know what I should do." And Jiao also understood that as a shadow guard, his emotions just now were a little dangerous. He must remove it as soon as possible. If Master knew, he would go back and train again. If it was serious, he would directly lose his life. Jingwan felt pain all over her body. She slowly opened her eyes. After a while, she was completely awake. She tried to sit up. It wasn't very strenuous. She moved her hands and feet and carefully felt it. Very good. She was basically sure that it was all superficial injuries and didn't hurt her internal organs. However, because she was a little dizzy, she might have a slight concussion. Jingwan stood up and thought of the thrill of falling off the cliff. She thought that she might die this time. She didn't expect that the actual consequences were almost negligible. However, she probably had to thank Wu Anho's Shitsi for being able to survive. Although she panicked after falling off the cliff, her mind wasn't blank. She remembered very clearly that after being thrown out of the carriage, Wu Anho's Shitsi pulled her in time and didn't let her fall straight to the sharp boulder. Although it was also because of him that she fell, his life-saving grace couldn't be denied. Jingwan was very worried about Sun Yijia, Yuan Qiaoqiao, and Zhou Yingshuang, who were in the same carriage as her. She didn't know if they would be as lucky as her. However, fortunately, their carriage was faster. Grandmother's carriage was much behind and definitely wasn't affected. Looking at the place where she fell, it had to be said that her luck was heaven-defying. There were rocks all around, but only this place was full of sand, ash, and a lot of scattered hay. Jingwan didn't show any surprise towards these abrupt things. This was because there was a temporary resting place that was dug out by people. There were more hay and other things piled up inside. Presumably, it was the temporary resting place of the villagers who went along the river to enter the mountain. The hay that was dug out outside should be the animals and monkeys that came down from the mountain. The monkeys, hiding in the dark, were very anxious because their future mistress hadn't noticed their master. Most of Jingwan's thoughts were right. This was indeed the masterpiece of the villagers at the foot of the White Dragon Temple. This accident saved a lot of effort for the secret guards to fake the crime scene. Jingwan looked up. It was so high that she definitely couldn't go up. It wouldn't be easy for the people above to come down to find her. She looked around again. There were endless cliffs and she didn't know how long the river was. Instead of spending time trying to go out along the river, it was better to wait here. After all, there might be another way down from the White Dragon Temple. If she went by herself and missed it, it would be very disadvantageous for her. She could only secretly pray that they were all right. As for her grandmother and others, there was nothing she could do about it. Suddenly, there was a splash of water. Jingwan looked back. Before she noticed where the sound came from, she saw the figure lying by the water. Jingwan's heart jumped. She hesitated for a moment. It seemed that the person floated down from the upper reaches. This might be a big trouble, but she couldn't just leave him to die. Seeing Jingwan walking towards their master, the several people in the dark finally breathed a sigh of relief. Jingwan walked to Li Hongyuan's side. At first glance, this person was really miserable. His clothes were torn into pieces. Looking at the neat cuts, it was obviously caused by a sharp weapon. If blood was seen every time he went down, it could be imagined how serious his injuries were. Squatting down, she reached out to check his breath. Although it was weak, he was still alive. This was good. However, Jingwan wasn't sure what his situation was. She didn't know how long he could hold on. Would he disappear in the next moment? Because there was some disheveled hair on his face, Jingwan still felt that this person was somewhat familiar. She brushed aside the hair. Her first thought was that this person looked too good. Then she immediately reacted. Wasn't this the sixth prince, Jin Qinhuang? Although Jingwan only met Li Hongyuan once in Dinggua Gongfu and didn't even look at him carefully, his face was really too conspicuous. It was hard to not remember. It was obvious that he was assassinated. Sure enough, it was a big trouble. Thinking of this person's reputation, although she couldn't arbitrarily judge a person based on what she heard, this face was really too attractive. It might not be a groundless rumor. Even so, Jingwan still decided to save him. After all, Jingwan wasn't a native of this world. In addition, the current situation was special. She couldn't care less about the boundaries between men and women. She reached out and touched his chest, neck, and limbs to make sure that there weren't any fractures. She didn't want to cause a second injury if she moved him. These simple first aid methods, as well as some life skills, were all things she had been forced to learn during the most difficult period of her previous life. This Miss Luo is rather too. Master, to her, is a strange man. A shadow guard couldn't help but frown. She's checking if Master has any fractures. It's obvious that she knows some medical skills. The current situation is special. Even if her behavior is inappropriate, she can't be blamed. On the contrary, she's meticulous and wholeheartedly thinking for Master. Under the premise of knowing Master's identity, this is really rare. After all, if she's not careful, she'll be putting her own reputation on the line. Not many women in the boudoir can do this. And Zhou opened his mouth. Because of Jingwan's behavior, his view of her changed a little. But if it was another man, would she also be like this? No, there wouldn't be an if. The Lady Protector wasn't a vegetarian. Because they were here, the Lady Protector didn't follow them down. Other men shouldn't even think about getting close to Miss Luo. Thinking like this, his feelings naturally improved a lot. After confirming that it was only an injury caused by a sharp weapon, Jingwan struggled to help him up. Because she had been exercising all year round, she naturally wasn't a delicate and weak woman. It was a little difficult for a man's weight to be all pressed on her body, but it wasn't to the extent that she couldn't walk. However, because of the force, the injuries on her body were more intense. Jingwan half supported and half dragged him into the temporary shelter and put him on the hay. Since she decided to save him, she naturally didn't think much about it. She quickly took off his accessories and put them aside. Then, she carefully took off his clothes, leaving only a pair of underwear. His appearance was off the charts, and so was his figure. A full 8-pack of abdominal muscles, but they weren't protruding. They presented a perfect streamlined shape. She didn't need to touch it to feel the strength contained in it. He really was the darling of the Creator. However, this wasn't a figure that a man who was intoxicated with wine and women could have. Jingwan naturally didn't have the time to pay attention to these. This perfect body really had a lot of injuries, mainly concentrated on the chest and arms. However, it was less than expected. Obviously, there were some places where the clothes were only torn. Even so, the situation wasn't optimistic. The wounds were a little white because of soaking in water. However, Jingwan didn't learn medical skills after all. She didn't know the result of soaking for a long time. In fact, Li Hongyuan's plan wasn't without flaws, especially when targeting Jingwan. She wasn't his enemy, so there was really no need to be so meticulous and thorough. After careful consideration, there would always be clues. It was just that Jingwan didn't know that she was being targeted. She also deliberately calculated her. She never thought in that direction. Even if she had doubts, she wouldn't think deeply about it. Li Hongyuan also grasped this mentality of hers, so he could be so unscrupulous. In this place where a cold could kill people, these wounds were easy to be infected if they weren't treated in time. Jingwan's face was very dignified. Looking around, there were very obvious traces. It could be seen that people often came and went. Jingwan looked around and found some commonly used things, such as a fire extinguisher and a crock. Although she knew how to make a fire, even if she didn't have it, it would take time. Moreover, she only knew how to do it, but she didn't really try it. She didn't know if it would work. It was better to have ready-made things. It was better to have some ready-made things. She used hay to light the fire, then added some firewood to make a fire. She then moved Li Hongyuan's body so that he wouldn't be cold. Jingwan picked up a crock and took Li Hongyuan's underwear and underwear. She went to the river to wash it and then filled it with water. She put the crock on a simple stove. After the water boiled, she poured some out and put it to the side to cool. Then she tore open the clothes and threw them in to boil. She scooped them up. Because it was urgent, Jingwan dried them. She didn't know if this would affect the disinfection. She shook the cold water to quickly cool it down. Then she dipped a cloth in the water and wiped Li Hongyuan's wounds one by one. She then wrapped the dried cloth around them. Jingwan's bandaging skills were naturally unquestionable. When Jingwan half carried Li Hongyuan and wrapped the cloth around his back, she suddenly heard this prince murmur in her ear. His breath fell on her sensitive earlobe, making it slightly itchy. It seemed like he was calling someone's name. Jingwan couldn't hear it clearly. She didn't know if it was her imagination, but he seemed to be calling Wan Wan. Jingwan naturally wouldn't be narcissistic enough to think that he was calling her. He was either calling someone else, or it was a similar pronunciation. The deepest wound on her left arm was so deep that the bone was almost visible. It was very troublesome, but there was no needle and thread. She couldn't stitch it up even if she wanted to. After she finished, Jingwan's body was sweating slightly due to the pain. Jingwan frowned. She also needed to wash up. Jingwan went to the river and wiped her body with a wet handkerchief. Then she saw the fish swimming in the river. Very good. Dinner was settled. In her previous life, when she was abnormally poor, catching fish was naturally a necessary skill. She didn't expect that even this skill would come in handy now. Jingwan turned back and found a few strands of pliable dry grass. She tied up some areas of her body that were in the way, such as her sleeves and skirt. Then she returned to the river and took off her shoes and socks. She stood barefoot on the gravel. Her feet, which had been wearing shoes all year round, suddenly came into contact with the ground. It really wasn't an ordinary pain. However, because Jingwan often walked barefoot on the cobblestones in her own territory, this bit of pain wasn't unbearable. She stretched her feet into the water to explore. The river water in the early spring was still relatively cold. What's more, the feet were not as sensitive as the hands that were exposed to the air all year round. When both feet were submerged in the water, Jingwan couldn't help but shiver a little. After standing for a bit to adapt, she slowly moved forward. Her movements were very light. Her feet were basically gliding in the water. She didn't raise her feet, so naturally there wasn't much movement. When the water was about to reach her knees, she found her target. Jingwan stopped, bent down, opened her hands, and used only a few seconds to lock on to the target. She quickly reached out. With a whoosh, she raised her hands. A fish that was wider than a palm was tightly caught in her hands. Because the fish left the water, it quickly swayed its tail, flinging out water droplets that scattered like pearls. Sure enough, it was something that was engraved into her bones. After so many years, she still didn't get used to it. Looking at this plump fish, Jingwan smiled with satisfaction. Originally, if it was only for her to eat, one was enough. However, she wasn't sure if that Honorable Jean Qinhuang would wake up, so she decided to catch another one. Retreating, she threw the fish in her hands towards the riverbank. Jingwan didn't know that her straightforward action of catching the fish was clearly seen by several people in the dark. They couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. They believed that even if they were to catch the fish, they might not be able to catch it with their bare hands. What's more, she succeeded in one strike. This was definitely a fish-catching veteran. Speaking of which, how could a young lady from the boudoir have this kind of ability? The Luo family was able to cover half the sky in Qi and Prefecture. There were naturally countless kinds of villages. Perhaps it was because she was fond of playing that she practiced this skill? But if it was just playing, how could she play to this extent? But they couldn't think of any other explanation. So, in the end, should they say that she had ***, or that she had a unique style? Perhaps it should be said that she's worthy of being the person that Master fancied. She's far from being comparable to an ordinary delicate woman? One of them said. The other three looked at him, their eyes clearly saying, "There's such a saying?" For Jingwan, catching the fish was relatively simple. Instead, it was more troublesome to handle it. Because of the strict management of ironware, in a farmer's household, every item that was forged with iron was very precious. There were no knives at all. As a result, Jingwan could only temporarily use a stone to polish one. To save time, choosing a stone was naturally very important. Polishing a stone was definitely not an easy task. After a few rounds, Jingwan's hands turned red. She raised her hand to look and took the remaining cloth to wrap around her hand. This was better. The shadow guards were vexed and had already made preparations to be punished by their master. The future Wang Fei was a proud and precious person. Even a little bit of skin would make their master's heart ache. To be tossed around like this. If they had known earlier, they would have left a dagger on their master's hand. A Wang Ye carrying an exquisite dagger inlaid with gems was very normal and would never arouse suspicion. It took a lot of time to properly handle the fish. Being able to find salt was definitely an unexpected surprise. Although it was a little less, it was enough to cook fish soup. Originally, she wanted to roast a fish, but after thinking about it, she decided against it. Boiling the fish soup, she dried her wet clothes. From time to time, she would also feed Li Hongyuan some water to moisten his lips. Looking at the chipped rough porcelain bowl in her hand, Jingwan even joked a few words to amuse herself. The noble Jin Qin Wang has been reduced to using this kind of thing. It's really wronged you. If Li Hongyuan had consciousness, he would probably think, Ben Wang doesn't mind you feeding him personally. Jingwan drank a bowl of fish soup. Perhaps it was because of the tossing and turning, plus her usual appetite was not bad. She ate the entire fish. Fish that only had salt added naturally couldn't compare to meticulously cooked fish. However, it was purely natural. Perhaps it was because the water and soil here was different that the fish didn't have a fishy smell. The taste was still not bad. She fed Li Hongyuan some fish soup. Without a spoon or the like, it was really difficult to feed him. The sky gradually darkened, but there was still no one coming to find them. It seemed that there was no way down. They should be preparing to take a detour from the foot of the mountain or some other place. Jingwan herself was fine, but she was very worried about Li Hongyuan. His current situation wasn't good at all. She didn't need to take any chances. It was inevitable that he would have a fever. Although she was tired and her body was in pain, Jingwan didn't dare to sleep. Not long after night fell, Li Hongyuan really started to have a fever. Jingwan applied a compress on his forehead and wiped his body at the same time, over and over again without stopping. She didn't expect that this would make his fever go down, she just hoped that he would feel a little more comfortable. Perhaps it was because of the high fever, or perhaps it was because deep in his heart, he was still thinking about the purpose of this trip. Li Hongyuan woke up, but he was still in a confused state and wasn't very clear-headed. However, he was very sure of one thing. The person in front of him was the one he wanted. Jingwan was caught off guard. Li Hongyuan grabbed Jingwan's wrist, and as he exerted force, she bumped into his sturdy chest. Wan. His voice was full of infinite affection and yearning, and his voice was hoarse, low, and sexy. At that moment, it was simply enough to make one's bones melt. Jingwan was suddenly a little confused. She didn't even hear what he said clearly. After a moment, she realized how ambiguous their current posture was. She struggled, but the more she struggled, the tighter Li Hongyuan held her. His hand was like a pair of pliers. And Li Hongyuan's consciousness wasn't clear. He didn't have much willpower and didn't know how to restrain himself. He just followed his inner desire, longing for her, wanting her. Her struggle made him feel that she was trying to escape from him. How could he allow this to happen? He grabbed her, turned over, and pressed her under his body. Jingwan's limbs were locked tightly. He suddenly opened his eyes. Those deep eyes were filled with an almost crazy possessiveness. Wan, you are mine. You can only be mine in this life. Don't even think about escaping. Then he unceremoniously kissed her. Jingwan was a little frightened. In the face of danger, it was instinctive to resist. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652953 HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com Mobile Edition Reading Website. Bicken.com. Chapter 72. Jingwan felt like she wasn't facing a person, but a real beast. His teeth seemed to have sunk deep into her blood vessels. She didn't dare to move. Her body froze, and her heart almost jumped out of her throat. Perhaps because he felt that Jingwan had become obedient, Li Hongyuan slowly let go of her. Then, he stuck out his tongue and licked it. It was obviously salty and had a rusty taste, but he seemed to find it incomparably delicious. He licked and sucked 2 more times, so much so that Jing Wan could even hear him swallow. "Wan Wan, you're mine. Mine. Don't try to leave me. Otherwise, I'll catch you and swallow you whole even if you're at the end of the world." Although his voice wasn't particularly clear, Jing Wan heard every word clearly this time. Was it too late to regret now? She was kind enough to save someone. She definitely didn't want to put herself in danger. She felt that she was more unlucky than the farmer in The Farmer and the Snake. At least, the snake attacked indiscriminately. As for her, she was completely suffering for someone else, okay? That's right. No matter how many times Li Hongyuan called Wan Wan, and no matter how familiar Jing Wan was with this name, she didn't feel the slightest sense of substitution. She didn't want to feel the slightest sense of substitution. She cursed the person who stressed her name countless times in her heart. Hurry up and tie up your extremely controlling beast. Don't let it out to harm others. One day in the future, when Jing Wan found out that the Wan Wan he was talking about was her, she wondered what expression Jing Wan would have. Should she tie up this beast or not? Tying it up would only harm herself. If she didn't tie it up, it would harm others. And herself. After all, Li Hongyuan wasn't in a good state. When he loosened his grip, he seemed a little weak. His whole body was lying on Jingwan's body defenselessly. However, the two words Wan Wan kept coming out of his mouth, as if he was sleep-talking. Li Hongyuan didn't respond for a long time. Jingwan thought that he had fainted again. Wan Wan. These two words suddenly rang in her ears. Jingwan didn't feel anything at first, but as she listened, Jingwan felt embarrassed. Jingwan tried to push him away. Then, as if he was greatly provoked, he slowly raised his head, opened his eyes, and stared at Jingwan. "Wan Wan, do you want to leave me that much?" His palms slid around her waist and unconsciously tugged at her clothes. He felt as if he could tear them apart with just a little force. "No." Jingwan anxiously and quickly denied it. She grabbed his hand that was on her waist. If her clothes were ruined by him, then she would have no choice but to risk her life to escape from his side. However, he didn't wear clothes because of his injury. It was completely different from a man and a woman whose clothes were ruined. If it was the former, she could barely stand on the side of righteousness. If it was the latter, she would completely lose her innocence. She only had one fate. When she went back, she would be carried into Jin Palace in a small sedan chair. From then on, she would be isolated from the world. It's just that it's a little uncomfortable to be pressed down by you. Jingwan patted him comfortingly. Li Hongyuan frowned for a while, as if he just realized what she was saying. "As long as you obediently stay by my side, I can do anything you want," Li Hongyuan said. He hugged Jingwan's waist and turned her over, letting her lie on her side. However, his arms never let go. Then Jingwan found that his wound was bleeding again because of the movement just now. "You're feverish. I'll wipe your body. Also, I'll treat your wound again. Can you let go of me first?" Li Hongyuan, who closed his eyes again, acted as if he didn't hear anything. Naturally, he was indifferent. Jingwan was helpless. After thinking about it, she braced herself and moved closer to his ear. She softly comforted him and promised him that she would never leave. Li Hongyuan, who was originally quiet, gradually shook his head from side to side. His brows were tightly knitted, as if he was in a dream. His arms unconsciously tightened. After the danger to Jingwan's neck passed, her waist was in danger again. It was about to break. She should have looked at the almanac before going out today. Perhaps there was a taboo on it. She was thinking about whether she should find the culprit who caused them to come to White Dragon Temple today. Because of Jingwan's words, Li Hongyuan remembered that in his previous life, Jingwan also saved him. The difference between that time and now was that his life was really in danger. If it weren't for Jingwan, he was sure that he would have died. What's more, at that time, he was at the most painful turning point in his life. He was suspicious of everything and everyone around him. Jingwan knew his situation and knew that it was better for her to save him than not, but she still chose to save him without hesitation. She also went through a lot and was facing an even bigger storm. Instead of being crushed, she became more tenacious. She tolerated his bad temper and took care of him wholeheartedly day after day. Although she almost didn't say anything after he woke up, and there was no smile on her face, you could see that she always had a straight back. Li Hongyuan didn't know when it started, but he no longer spoke ill of her or smashed the medicine bowl she brought. He began to be silent, and his eyes began to follow her. Before that, he had already noticed this woman. He even admired her in his heart. Her unyielding spirit, her courage, her tenacity, and her ability were far inferior to many men. When he couldn't take his eyes off her, he knew that he wanted her. However, this woman had already become someone else's wife. She didn't belong to him. He no longer gave up on himself. So what if everyone in the world wronged him? There was always someone who could be sincere to him. She did her best to save him, so he had to be worthy of her sincerity, right? From that moment on, Li Hongyuan really changed. He wanted to sit on the throne, and he wanted this woman. It could be said that without Jing Wan, there might not be the Emperor Li Hongyuan who became the final winner in the desperate situation. Unfortunately, there was a word in the world called too late. He didn't have the time to obtain the supreme power to protect her, and she had already died. Therefore, when he had a chance to start over, the throne was no longer the most important thing to him. What he wanted most was to have her, and then protect her. He wanted to keep her smile, and protect her restrained gentleness and straightforwardness. Even he couldn't hurt a single finger of hers. Of course, this was with the exception of special injuries caused under certain special circumstances. He schemed, sought the throne, and seized power. It was all just to let her stand at the highest position. No one could threaten her position. Jing Wan had never experienced it herself, so she would never know that her heart was actually the softest. Even now, when she was under Li Hongyuan's control, when she comforted him, she removed all distracting thoughts and used up all her patience. That was her most unique gentleness. Not many people could resist it, especially when they were in a vulnerable state. Even though he knew that things were different now, Li Hongyuan was still trapped in the dream of his previous life. Because she was someone else's wife, she rejected him. Even though he used despicable means to take her, she still ran away from him. Then, before he could obtain the supreme power, she left him completely. She was so far away that he could never reach her. So now, he only wanted to hold on to her tightly. No matter if it was herself or anyone else, he couldn't let her leave him. He couldn't. No matter what kind of emotions Jing Wan had, she couldn't vent it on someone who was seriously injured and unconscious. She had to be patient and tell him over and over again that she wouldn't leave, that she wouldn't leave. Li Hongyuan finally sobered up a little again. He opened his eyes and looked at Jing Wan. His intestines turned 100 times, tenderly and affectionately. Wan Wan. His gaze at this moment made Jing Wan's heart skip 2 beats uncontrollably. She felt that it was inexplicably familiar. Plus, his voice. Jing Wan abruptly froze, suddenly remembering that strange spring dream last night. That man who made love with her, the only thing she remembered clearly was the other party's gaze, but it coincided with Jin Qinhuang's gaze at this time. Jing Wan had the urge to cover her face. Could it be that last night's dream was actually a kind of foreshadowing her encounter today? But why didn't it foreshadow anything else, such as falling off the cliff today? Some things, once they crawled out of your memory, the difficulty of pressing them back would increase exponentially. Especially now that she was in a state of ambiguity and fanciful thoughts. Being stared at by him like this, in addition to the disturbing images that kept appearing in her mind, Jing Wan inexplicably felt her face turn red and her heart beat faster. She awkwardly and somewhat embarrassedly turned her gaze away. Li Hongyuan reached out and pinched her chin, forcing her to look at him. When Jing Wan felt that he might kiss her again, he opened his mouth and said, "Wan Wan has never taken the initiative to kiss me." He pointed at his chapped lips. "Kiss me once, then I'll let you go." Even if Jing Wan had a good temper, she couldn't help but want to kick him to death. If it wasn't for the fact that she didn't have any interaction with him from beginning to end, and that his attitude was too natural and casual, Jing Wan would have thought that he was actually calling her and that his consciousness was completely awake. He was deliberately taking liberties with her and not treating her as someone else. Li Hongyuan closed his eyes again. His attitude was very obvious. If she wasn't willing, then forget it. But don't expect him to let go. Jingwan was so angry that she raised her hand and hammered him. Li Hongyuan happened to fall on the open wound, and he groaned. Jingwan hurriedly apologized. When he took an inch and asked for a mile again, her apology was immediately thrown out of the sky. She even gave him a few kisses, but subconsciously, she used less strength. If the mountain doesn't come to me, then I'll go to the mountain. Li Hongyuan held the back of Jingwan's head and kissed her fiercely. He swept her mouth completely to the side, let her go, and set her free. Jingwan immediately rolled around. She didn't even care about her image, jumped up, and wiped her mouth fiercely. Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan, who was so energetic, and suddenly smiled. He said in a low voice, "That's great." This time, Jingwan really covered her face with her hands. His appearance was too foul, and his smile was even more foul. She was clearly the one at a disadvantage, but why was her anger getting weaker and weaker? She admitted that she was a love-struck fool, but it turned out that there was an invisible, love-struck fool attribute. It was just that she hadn't met such an evildoer before, so it hadn't been discovered? Li Hongyuan gave a low laugh. I didn't know that Wan had such a side. Then he suddenly coughed twice. The red on his face from the high temperature became more obvious, and his breathing weakened again. Jingwan threw away all her thoughts in an instant. She reached out to touch Li Hongyuan's forehead. She unconsciously pulled her hand back like she had been burned. The temperature rose again. Jingwan's heart was burning with anxiety. She was not only worried about Li Hongyuan's life, but also about her little life and the fate of the Luo family. A dignified prince had died in front of her. It had nothing to do with her, but it also had something to do with her. Then the Luo family would be implicated by her. Your Highness, please don't let anything happen to you. Your Highness. Jingwan hurriedly rebandaged his wound and wiped his body, while trying to wake him up. Wan, don't leave me. Even if he fell asleep again, he still murmured this sentence. All right, I won't leave. As long as you're well, I'll promise you anything. Jingwan should be glad. When she answered this sentence, Li Hongyuan's consciousness had almost sunk into darkness. Otherwise, according to his temperament, if he caught this sentence in the future, who knew how much land Jingwan had to give him and how much compensation? The shadow gods outside almost couldn't help but rush in. But thinking that their master had just received a favor from the beauty, they reckoned that he wouldn't like them to appear. It would be better to wait. Jingwan kept wiping him. After nearly an hour, Li Hongyuan's body temperature finally dropped a little. Even though Jingwan exercised every day, her hands still felt weak. She sat paralyzed beside Li Hongyuan, looking at his peaceful sleeping face, lost in thought. After about a quarter of an hour, her empty brain started to operate again. First, she checked his temperature. It didn't rise anymore, which could be considered a good thing. Jingwan hugged her knees and sat at the side, starting to think about how to deal with the aftermath of this matter. As for losing her first kiss and being molested by him, she naturally wouldn't be like a native girl who sought death. She would just treat it as being bitten by a dog. Right now, she wasn't sure who would find them first. Would it be someone from her family? Would it be a monk from White Dragon Temple? Would it be Jin Qinhuang's people? If it was the former, she believed that they would be willing to help her cover up the matter. If it was a monk from the temple, as long as Great Master Liao Chen was really like the rumors, then there was no need to worry. The trouble was the latter. They obeyed Jin Qinhuang's orders and could even be considered as Jin Qinhuang's private property. Everything was for the benefit of Jin Qinhuang. In their view, since she saw their master's body, then she was already their master's person. Although she was a junior of a court official, her background wasn't that strong. Then, even if she saved their master, letting her enter the Wangfu to serve their master was already a great reward. Not only would they erase the grace of saving their lives, they would also be grateful. This was a natural way of thinking, and there was only one person who could interfere with their way of thinking. Jingwan's gaze once again fell on Li Hongyuan. How will you treat me? He was a Wangye, what did he not have? Perhaps she could let him act as if he didn't know who saved him? But, if she refused like this, wouldn't he feel that he had lost face and fly into a rage out of humiliation? She could choose to leave early, but if Jin Qin Wang breathed his last, he would definitely investigate to the end. She didn't think that she wouldn't be found out. Maybe when the time came, she would be directly branded as the assassin of the prince. Then she would just wait for her whole family to be executed. Jing Wan, who was lost in thought, naturally didn't know that she was completely looking for trouble. Whatever situation she thought of would not happen, the people outside had already thought of everything for her. Because the moonlight wasn't bright, almost nothing could be seen outside. Li Hongyuan's 4 shadow guards came closer after the night turned dark, so that if their master was in a critical situation, they could use the excuse that they just happened to find their location. These people were well trained, so Jing Wan naturally couldn't discover them. It was just that the result of listening to this kind of corner was often embarrassing oneself. They had seen their master play around with other women. Without even touching the corner of his clothes, he could make those women fall head over heels for him. They had also seen how those women who tried to get close to him in private ended up in a miserable state. However, they had never seen him so domineeringly possessive of a woman. He didn't allow her to refuse or resist. He also had an unprecedented tenderness and unreserved pampering. As long as you obediently stay by my side, I can do anything you want. No one was clearer than them about the meaning of this sentence. Because they hadn't seen any movement inside for a long time, and seeing that Miss Luo seemed to be somewhat drowsy, the few people finally couldn't help but order some sedative medicine, and Jing Wan finally fell asleep. The few people hurried in to check on Li Hongyuan's situation, but before they could approach, the sleeping Li Hongyuan suddenly opened his eyes, sharpness and killing intent coexisting. The few people were frightened by his gaze. When they came in, they were very sure that their master was asleep, so the current situation could only mean one thing. The injured master was more alert than usual. Even if it was a sound that ordinary people couldn't detect, he could let him know, and then he reacted almost instinctively, forcing himself to wake up. Perhaps what made him react this way wasn't that he was afraid that someone would take the opportunity to harm him, but that he always remembered in his consciousness that there was another person who needed his protection by his side. The few people hurriedly knelt down on one knee to beg for forgiveness. Li Hongyuan didn't look at them. His eyes fell on Jing Wan, who fell beside him. Master, it's just a sedative medicine, not a knockout drug. And Zhou hurriedly explained in a low voice. This was the reason why they came in now, because they didn't dare to use knockout drugs, and sedative medicine didn't have much effect in a situation where people were more alert. Li Hongyuan didn't make a sound. After a moment, and Zhou came forward. Because he only paid attention to him and didn't pay attention to Jing Wan, and Zhou almost touched Jing Wan, so he was kicked by Li Hongyuan. Fortunately, he didn't have much strength now, so Zhou wasn't injured. The few people's eyes darkened. Perhaps it was because their master cared far more about an insignificant woman than they, the subordinates who risked their lives for him, so they felt it was unfair in their hearts. But after Miss Luo came to the capital in a short period of time, especially today's matter, they gradually realized that in their master's heart, Miss Luo might have already surpassed himself. So, what other thoughts could they have? And Zhou came forward again, and naturally went around from the side. After checking Li Hongyuan's pulse, and Zhou found that Li Hongyuan's situation was better than he expected. He looked at the bandage and wasn't sure if it was related to Miss Luo's previous treatment method. He was quite surprised when he saw it. Miss Luo even knew some things that they didn't know, so he was no longer surprised that she could take care of people so well. He looked at the knot of the bandage again. It didn't knot, so he gave up the idea of opening it to look at the wound. Li Hongyuan didn't refuse to eat the pills that Zhou handed over, and then told them when they would come to pick him up. Quietly coming and quietly leaving. Then, a doubt emerged in their hearts. When Master was facing Miss Luo before, was he completely awake or was he in a semi-conscious state? If it was the latter, they could reluctantly accept it. After all, it was the person he had been thinking about for so long, it was understandable that he couldn't control his emotions. But if it was the former, even if it was their master, they couldn't help but say that it was too shameless. The shameless Jin Qin Wang would only be more shameless. He didn't know what was called the most shameless. Even if Jing Wan fell asleep because of the sedative medicine, her sleep wasn't very peaceful. After hearing Li Hongyuan's movements, she sat up. She was annoyed at how she fell asleep and hurriedly went to check on Li Hongyuan's situation. This time, she didn't feel hot, but felt cold instead. Jing Wan turned around and poked at the fire, adding in some firewood. Then she prepared to move Li Hongyuan closer to the fire. But she forgot that this was a jackal who didn't forget to eat meat even when his life was in danger. So when she approached him, she was pulled over, and he even habitually grabbed her to his mouth and took 2 bites. Jingwan's face immediately darkened, hating herself for not having a long memory. But this time, she learned to be obedient. As long as he didn't move his mouth, she would let him hold her and not struggle. Then she tried to use the previous method to appease him. Unfortunately, this time, even if her mouth was dry from talking, a certain person didn't move. He just held her in his arms like he was protecting food. Jingwan finally gave up and gave up. She would just treat it as a natural heater. In any case, it was still cold at night. In this world, Jingwan had been sleeping by herself since she was born. Because she wasn't a real child, even the nanny who accompanied her to sleep was rejected by her. Suddenly being held in someone's arms, plus the pain in her body, she felt very uncomfortable. She couldn't do anything while being imprisoned in his arms. She might as well sleep peacefully. But even if she was sleepy and tired, it was still very difficult to fall asleep. Jingwan tried to ignore the hand on her waist as much as possible. She began to count sheep in her heart. She didn't know how long had passed before she finally fell asleep in a daze. Jingwan didn't know that after she fell asleep, Li Hongyuan actually opened his eyes. Right now, he was really very awake. It had to be said that this was thanks to his strong physique and Jiu's medicine. Everyone said that he didn't raise trash. And Jiu's medical skills were naturally very good. If he was released, it wouldn't be a problem for him to become a miracle doctor. Li Hongyuan touched Jingwan's face and whispered, "Wan, you have to start getting used to me now. You can't wait until after we get married and still not let me hug you." This laid the foundation for this smelly and shameless person to often attack at night. Just like the previous night, Li Hongyuan slept well in the following days. When it was time for Li Hongyuan and the shadow guards to agree on, this time, they made a noise outside. Naturally, they didn't want Jingwan to be embarrassed after coming in. At the moment of the noise, Jingwan basically woke up. When she was thinking about how to get rid of Li Hongyuan's arms, she didn't expect that when she gently turned over, Li Hongyuan's arm would let go. Although she was very surprised, Jingwan still quickly stood up. A moment later, a group of people led by an E walked in with torches. https://www.beacon.com/11/11807/6652954. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is exempted. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.beacon.com. Beacon.com mobile version reading website: beacon.com. Chapter 73. Does Miss know who we are? An E clearly knew everything, but when he saw Jingwan, he still appropriately expressed surprise. Jingwan didn't answer him and just glanced at Li Hongyuan. Her meaning couldn't be more obvious. And Jiu no longer hesitated and quickly went forward to check Li Hongyuan's condition again. Fortunately, the medicine had taken effect and he was gradually getting better. He nodded to the others and then nimbly untied the cloth strips on Li Hongyuan's body, applied medicine on him, and then used a brand new white cloth to bandage him. Compared to Jingwan alone, it was much easier for Jiu to treat his wounds with help. After that, the two worked together and quickly helped him put on his clothes. It was obvious that it was his usual clothes, low-key and gorgeous. With just a simple tidying up, Li Hongyuan's sorry state was swept away. With his eyes closed, he was definitely a quiet and peaceful sleeping beautiful man. And Yi saw that Li Hongyuan's side was neatly tidied up and once again looked at Jingwan. We all know about what happened halfway up the mountain. It seems that Miss is the Luo family's third Mississippi. For Miss to be safe and sound, it is worthy of celebration. Jingwan nodded. Indeed. After hesitating for a moment, she opened her mouth. May I ask how are the others? Their lives are not in danger. Even so, it didn't mean that they were all right. However, it was good to be alive. Being alive represented hope. Many thanks. You don't deserve it. It should be us thanking Mississippi. If it wasn't for Miss, we don't know what would have happened to Master. If something happened to Master, we can't absolve ourselves from the blame even if we die 10,000 times. It was just a coincidence that we ran into him. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't leave him in the lurch. Moreover, Jin Qin Wang is a noble descendant of the heavens. Naturally, the heavens help the worthy. And Yi secretly said in his heart, there wouldn't be anyone else. If they happened to run into him, they would also be cleared out. Miss is too modest. Jingwan declined to comment and didn't want to be entangled in this matter anymore. Then, it's still the same words as before. How are you going to deal with me? Not only an Yi, but even the others were secretly complaining incessantly. They had already diverged, so why did they have to turn back to this question? Jingwan only thought that Li Hongyuan was still asleep, but they knew very well that their master was awake. How could they dispose of his sweetheart in front of their master? How many lives did they have? But the second time she asked, if he still avoided talking about it, it would inevitably arouse her suspicion. And Yi glanced at his master, hoping to get a hint. Unfortunately, his master clearly planned to pretend to the end. Looking at the others, all of them were very busy, and none of them paid any attention to him. He secretly scolded them for having no sense of loyalty. However, he also knew that these guys did not want to offend their future mistress. What if she decided to settle accounts with them in the future? After pondering for a moment, he could only brace himself and ask, Miss, what are your thoughts? Do you want a status or something else? Can you handle this kind of small matter on behalf of your master? Jingwan interrupted him. Small matter? Great aunt, ancestor, your matter, even if it's a sesame or mung bean, you still have to deal with it as a big matter. Moreover, this really is not a small matter. You don't have to look down on yourself. This one naturally cannot, but this one will report misintentions back to my master and let him decide. Jingwan thought that according to Jin Qinwang's casual attitude towards women, it would be normal for his subordinates to casually deal with people. Fortunately, Li Hongyuan did not know Jingwan's thoughts, otherwise he might be so angry that he would vomit blood. It was even more likely that he would ruthlessly retaliate against Jingwan. Then, please tell Wang Ye that Chenu does not want anything. Treat it as if I have never seen Wang Ye and have never saved Wang Ye. Naturally, you have never seen me. There was no intersection in the past and there will be no intersection in the future. Great aunt, I'm afraid that I can't let you do as you wish. Not only was there an intersection in the past, there will be an even greater entanglement in the future. This one will pass on Miss words as it is. Jingwan nodded. I will wait for Wang Ye's decision. If Wang Ye wants Miss to enter the Fu, what will Miss do? And Yi curiously asked, but after he asked, he faintly regretted it. He originally wanted to remedy the situation, but because he had been intentionally or unintentionally paying attention to his master, fearing that he had some instructions that he did not see, this time, he really bumped into his half-opened eyes. He did not need to think to know that his master also wanted to know the answer, so the words that had just slipped to his mouth were swallowed back down. You are too rude. Even if her family background was not prominent, but this was not something that a bodyguard could ask, even if this bodyguard served a member of the imperial family. And Yi was embarrassed. He was the one who sought death first, so even if he really died, he had to bite the bullet and seek death to the end. This one is only doing my duty. I thought that if my master asked, there would be an explanation. I did not mean to offend Mississippi, asking Miss to forgive me. Jingwan smiled, truly a loyal and good bodyguard. This question, wait until your master really wants me to enter Jin Wangfu, then I will use my actions to tell you. And Yi felt that although she was smiling, her eyes were really cold. It even made him feel that it was very similar to his master at certain times, making him unable to help but feel apprehensive. This time, perhaps he had really offended her. He could only hope that she would not hold a grudge. Otherwise, as long as she had the slightest intention of finding trouble with him, he believed that his master would be very happy to teach him a lesson to please her. His heart was so tired. He was clearly taking the blame for his master, but he did not get any benefits. Then, we will leave first. They stepped forward to help and Jiao helped Li Hongyuan up. Wait. Jingwan called out to them. Miss, what else do you want? Who can do me a favor and cross off this mark? Let others think that I was scratched by a broken branch when I fell from above. Jingwan did not avoid touching her neck. As soon as these words came out, these shadow guards felt that their surroundings seemed to have become a lot colder. Their backs felt cold and they resisted the urge to look at their master. What, is it very difficult? I don't know the severity of the matter and am worried that I will hurt my blood vessels if I use too much force. If it's you guys, you should be able to cover the mark without hurting it too much. The meaning behind her words was that even if they did not do it, she would do it herself. This problem was even more of a headache than the first one. Looking at their awkward and evasive gazes, Jingwan said, I thought that you guys were used to this kind of mark and didn't find it strange. But in fact, when you came in, didn't you already see it? And your expressions were very certain who did it. But now, you're so shy that you don't look like a man at all. Jingwan didn't hold back and stabbed Li Hongyuan first, then stabbed the group of secret guards until they were drenched in blood. Great aunt, I'm really wronged. They definitely have never seen these things. Also, please don't talk nonsense, it will kill people. It's completely because your bite mark is too obvious that we saw it at a glance. We definitely did not pry on purpose. It's not that we're not like men, it's that you're more valiant and bold than men. Master, the future princess consort's fighting strength is too terrifying, we subordinates can't handle it. Stop pretending, those romantic affairs are all sins that you created. Don't ask us subordinates to take the wind and rain when things come to a head. You can hide for a while, but you can't hide forever. When the princess consort marries you and comes to settle the score behind closed doors, we subordinates can't help you. Li Hongyuan was very indifferent to Jingwan's words. He planned it himself, so there was nothing that he couldn't bear. He couldn't wait for Jingwan to settle the score with him. The more she cared about these things, the more she cared about him. He was just unhappy that Jingwan wanted to erase the marks he left behind. Although he wasn't sober at that time and didn't have a good taste of Wan's blood, when he was sober, he couldn't bear to hurt her. But now, he didn't regret it. Compared to a long period of time when she had to hide it and might be discovered by others, it was indeed more convenient to just erase it directly. Even if she didn't experience ups and downs, Wan was decisive and resolute in her bones. This kind of thing wouldn't cause harm to others, and she only needed to leave a scar as the price to put an end to many troublesome things. She didn't need to think about what she would do. As for this group of insensible people, the future mistress's neck should be looked at indiscriminately. She had to wash their eyes properly when they went back. Erasing the bite mark was a foregone conclusion. Li Hongyuan naturally couldn't let her do it by herself, so he secretly touched Jiao. And Jiao, who got the hint, was not surprised. He was the most suitable person to do this kind of thing, but every time his master thought of it in the future, he was afraid that he would remember it. He wouldn't remember that he was the one who gave the order now. And Jiao accepted it very calmly. I'll do it. I think I know a lot about external injuries. What do you think, Miss Luo? Jingwan nodded. It didn't matter who did it. It would definitely be better than her. And Jiao broke the branch and walked to Jingwan. Now she inexplicably felt that she was much more dazzling than before when she was in a coma. She didn't shrink back when she encountered difficulties. She faced difficulties head-on. She did things and spoke neatly without hesitation. She wasn't arrogant, but one could feel her pride. Everything she showed was far beyond the calmness and wisdom of her age. She was very similar to his master, who was mature many years ago. At this moment, Anjo seemed to suddenly understand a little of the reason why his master was so obsessed with her. Indeed, only such a woman was the most suitable for his master. Because when something happened, she would not only not be a hindrance, but could even preside over the overall situation when his master was not there. It needs to be realistic. The wound may be a little long, but it only needs to be covered up on the surface. After all, even a master of external injuries will not carefully check the wound on your neck. Jingwan frowned slightly. Make it deeper. I don't want to cover it up for a while, but for a lifetime. The fake surface wound is too shallow. After healing and removing the scab, the imprint inside is as clear as before. Then what I'm doing now is just suffering in vain. And Joe was speechless. After looking carefully, he found that his master's bite was not ordinary ruthless. Even the best medicine to remove scars could not disappear. Probably he really wanted to accompany her for a lifetime. To completely cover it up, the scar left behind might be bigger. Did his master regret it? It will be very painful. If Miss Luo can't bear it. If I were you, it's already over. Don't you know that the more you hesitate, the greater the impact it will have on the other party? Jingwan said, tilting her neck and silently urging. And Zhou's hands inexplicably trembled. He didn't have this reaction when he was treating his master's wound. Jingwan smiled at him comfortingly and even joked, "Steady, otherwise my life will really be lost in your hands." Sure enough, the more he said, the greater the impact on the other party. He really deeply felt it, and the feeling of being on the back. He could be sure that his master was staring at him. "Great aunt, please don't laugh. Master's vinegar jar is about to overturn. Originally, he had already held a grudge against you for making a move. After it was over, he'd better ask to train for a period of time. If you're like this, perhaps it's better for me to do it myself?" Jingwan still smiled. Swish swish, Jingwan felt an obvious pain, but her heart felt a lot more relaxed. In this place where women were extremely harsh, such a bite mark, not to mention an unmarried girl, even a married woman would attract gossip. Those who thought that they were noble and cultured, once they saw this kind of thing, would spit out the most vicious, cruel, and unkind words. Because they themselves were deeply bound, they couldn't tolerate anyone being different from them. In the eyes of others, Jingwan didn't even frown. She just covered it with her handkerchief. But then she thought of something and loosened it, letting the blood stain her collar. Not to mention that Li Hongyuan saw the blood on Jingwan's neck, his eyes became more and more dangerous. Even Anjo frowned in disapproval. "Miss Luo." Jingwan didn't care and waved her hand. "I fainted when I fell down. If there's no blood on my clothes, how can it be justified? I'll deal with it later." Master refused to treat the wound, and now she refused his advice. The purpose was to succeed in the disguise. On this point, the two seemed to have a tacit understanding. The difference was that Miss Luo was doing it for others, while Master was doing it for himself. Comparing the two, it seemed that Miss Luo was more open-minded and selfless, while Master was selfish and narrow-minded. And Gio handed her a bottle of medicine. "It can make the wound stop bleeding and scab quickly, and it won't leave any traces of powder." Jingwan accepted it without hesitation. After all, it had been so long, there must be a difference in the wound. "Thank you. Let's go, the people looking for Miss Luo should be arriving soon." And Yi reminded. Jingwan also nodded. Although there was a big difference between people who practiced martial arts and those who didn't, in Jingwan's view, people who practiced martial arts couldn't reach the level of mystical martial arts novels in her previous life. Relying on a pair of feet, they could travel 1,000 li a day and so on. It was absolutely a fantasy. If the time of their accident and the time of Jin Qinhuang's assassination wasn't too long, then the people looking for her shouldn't be too far away. When they were preparing to leave, and Joe suddenly opened his mouth and asked, "Miss hasn't seen us before, yet you're so assured to hand Wang Ye over to us. After all, according to common sense, the people looking for Wang Ye wouldn't be just a group of people. It could also be those assassins, right? Jing Wan looked at him with surprise. Allow me to be impolite, but are you saying that I'm stupid, or are you saying that you're stupid? If it was an assassin who broke in and saw the sleeping Jin Qin Wang, plus an unarmed and weak woman, their first reaction would only be to rush forward and kill to silence. Would they still have the leisure to talk so much with me? Moreover, I also don't know where the assassin came from, to be so daring. After they might have already succeeded, they still pursued a Qin Wang relentlessly, insisting on confirming his life and death? You guys took so long to find us. Presumably Jin Qin Wang also fell from the mountain into the river. Those assassins have either been executed or have already escaped. If there are still so many of you chasing after us, then how incompetent are the people around Jin Qin Wang? Facing Jingwan's scrutinizing gaze, and Zhou really felt that he was stupid to the extreme. He should have long understood that she was different from the average woman in the boudoir. It was impossible for her to not be able to see through the crux of the matter, and it was even more impossible for her to lose her ability to think because of fear. Wasn't her performance perfect from beginning to end? He delivered himself to her door to be slapped in the face, and Zhou instructed her to quickly treat the wound on her neck before he somewhat awkwardly went to help his master up. After that, Jingwan watched them leave and very quickly disappeared into the darkness. She turned around and began to clean the wound. After confirming that Jingwan couldn't see, Li Hongyuan pushed away an Zhou who were supporting him. His posture was ramrod straight. Where was the half-dead look? It was just a typical case of throwing away after using, taking it for granted, without the slightest bit of embarrassment. Stay behind. Yes. How could he really just leave? At the very least, he had to wait until she was picked up by Quan Su and Quan Wei. The people following him were somewhat perturbed, not knowing what he thought of the previous matters. They waited for a long time without seeing his anger, so they could only quietly follow him. The matter that I asked you to investigate, what is the result? Being asked about serious matters, naturally they didn't dare to neglect. Miss Luo came to Bai Long Temple in advance. The people left in Luo Fu sent a pigeon, but we didn't receive any news. It has been confirmed that the pigeon is missing, but that letter didn't have any special content. It was covered up as usual, so there shouldn't be any problem. The matter of a wild beast crashing into Elder Ruan's youngest daughter's carriage was an accident. You must find out the whereabouts of the pigeon. Even if it was eaten, you must find the bones for Ben Wang. Carefully investigate everyone around Ruan Fengfei, including herself. Oh, yes. Master didn't allow any accidents to happen to Miss Luo, so it was understandable. Even if the bones of the pigeon were eaten by a dog, it would be dug out. Since it was suspected that Ruan Fengfei set up a trap herself, then it must be investigated again and again. It didn't matter if she courted death, but if she implicated Miss Luo, then it must not happen. Why did Wan and the others come in advance? Sun Gongzi suggested Miss Sun because he said that he would be very busy in 2 days. He hoped to take advantage of these 2 days to see the flourishing peach blossoms of Bai Long Temple. Miss Sun and Miss Luo talked about it, and Miss Luo agreed, so there was the following matter. Why did Sun Yilin become busy? Wasn't it because Li Hongyuan didn't want him to have time to contact Jingwan? He just didn't want him to be unwilling to let go of these 1 or 2 days of free time. He had to deliberately get closer to Jingwan. After the carriage fell off the cliff, did he regret it? It seems that this prince was too kind to him. The coldness in Li Hongyuan's words made the people around him shiver. Speaking of regret, Li Hongyuan also had a little. In his previous life, Wan didn't suffer such a crime. Everything changed because of his actions. However, he was never a person who regretted, and he wouldn't stop changing the things he wanted to change because of this accident. He would only think about how to protect Jingwan more carefully. What's going on with Fu Yunting? Heir Wu Anho brought his wife to Bai Long Temple to burn incense and return a vow. When they were leaving the city, they met Miss Luo and the others. After knowing each other's purpose, they went together. This prince had someone act as a matchmaker for him, and also gave him money. Because he was allowed to take a leave of absence for the wedding, he really enjoyed it. He sighed silently. Fu was on his own. Master, there's one more thing. Nanny Gong said that after Miss Luo fell off the cliff, Wu Anho helped Miss Luo and saved her from the danger of losing her life. Aside from the fact that he had to report all the big and small things related to Miss Luo, his original intention was that his master would treat Fu better on account of him saving Miss Luo, but he didn't expect that. Hearing this, Li Hongyuan suddenly stopped in his tracks. Originally, he didn't reveal much of his emotions, but in an instant, the sinister murderous intent almost solidified. Fu Yunting, perhaps this prince should directly chop you up and feed you to the dogs, so as to completely eliminate all future troubles. The shadow guards couldn't help but retreat in horror. They felt that if Fu was in front of their master would really do as he said. This reaction was completely wrong. If they still couldn't guess that there was some kind of relationship between Fu and Miss Luo, they could go and knock their heads against a wall. According to their master's extreme possessiveness towards Miss Luo, if any other man got close to her, he would definitely get jealous and keep them far away, secretly causing a lot of trouble for them. However, even Chen Zhengmin, who was about to become Miss Luo's fiancé, didn't cause their master to have such a strong reaction. Since it was Fu Yunting who stepped on their master's sore spot, then no matter what kind of abyss of suffering he had in the future, they wouldn't dare to sympathize with him anymore. When Nanny Gong specially mentioned this matter, it wasn't that she didn't want to repay Li Hongyuan a little because she couldn't tolerate his actions anymore. However, she probably didn't expect that she would directly stab Li Hongyuan's Achilles heel, causing Fu Yunting to almost lose his life. The most wronged person was none other than Fu Yunting. He didn't know anything. Even on the road from the entrance of the capital to Bai Long Temple, he didn't meet Jing Wan face to face. His new wife was talking to old Madame Luo at the back, while he, Sun Yilin, and Luo Jingbua were riding in front. He just happened to be in the position closest to the cliff. https://www.beacon.com/11/11807/6652955. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.beacon.com. Biku Gu mobile reading website, beacon.com. Chapter 74. This time, except for Jing Wan, it took them 4 to 6 hours to rescue the others from the cliff. The main reason was that the terrain was too dangerous. Even if they used ropes to drop people down to save them, it was difficult to find a place to land. It was all thanks to the many monks of White Dragon Temple. Their lower bodies were solid and their strength was great enough. It could be said that they directly paved a human ladder. If it were other servants, they would have become weak before they could get down. In addition, Jingwan's carriage was at the outermost, sandwiched between 2 trees. The horse was hanging in mid-air. When all the people who were thrown out of the carriage were rescued, the horse had been hanged alive. If that was all, it would not be a big deal. However, Yuan Qiao and Zhou Yingshuang were still in the carriage. After such a long time, the roots of the 2 trees had been turned over from the soil. Even if the carriage was on the verge of collapse, the 2 of them shrank as much as possible to the back of the carriage. Their hands were tightly gripping the window. Even if their nails were bleeding, their fingers were numb, and their consciousness was getting worse, they did not dare to move. They were afraid that they would fall down. They did not know why they were still holding on. In this way, they could not directly cut the rope of the horse. Jing Wan was still below. They did not know her exact position. If they let the horse fall, what if it hit her? Some people wanted to say that since it was confirmed that she fell on the bottom of the river, how could there be a chance of survival? But when she saw Madame Luo's tense face, she didn't dare to say it out loud. In the beginning, someone had only muttered a few words, but she had heard it from far away. She looked at the amiable old woman with a fierce gaze, as if she wanted to devour someone. And it was definitely not only Madame Luo who cared about Jingwan's safety. Even the most obedient cat would show its sharpest claws after this. Whoever dared to say another word would not have a good ending. Even if White Dragon Temple had already sent monks and Luo family servants down the mountain to find Jingwan, even if the others were rescued, Madame Luo still stood at the edge of the cliff and refused to leave. Gong Mama did her best to comfort old Madame Luo, telling her that Miss was blessed by the heavens and that nothing would happen to her. However, these words were useless and powerless at the moment. Nanny Gong was such a strict person that she would never criticize others in her heart. When she stood beside Madame Luo, she cursed Li Hongyuan fiercely in her heart. That bastard had always done whatever he wanted without considering the feelings of others. At that moment, Nanny Gong even had the impulse to tell Jingwan everything so that she could see his true colors. In the end, it was Great Master Liaochen who arrived late and personally assured old Madame Luo that third Miss Luo's life was not in danger. When others said that Jingwan had no chance of survival, old Madame Luo was so angry that her eyes turned red and she didn't believe them. But when Master Liaochen said this, she was still suspicious. In fact, she also faintly felt that her most beloved granddaughter was gone. After all, she was so tall. How much good fortune did she have to be to let her escape death? Because of this, she suspected Master Liaochen as well. Ba, Master Liaochen said, there are no signs in old Madame's life that the white-haired person will have to send off the black-haired person. Therefore, old Madame, you can rest assured. This was a blessing in disguise for old Madame Luo. Master Liaochen had 3 divinations every year, but in fact, he had already divined 2 out of the 3. Somehow, he felt that the third destined person was about to appear. However, in order to comfort old Madame Luo, he was not stingy. Therefore, when Master Liaochen said that there was a destined person, it was not certain. He was always merciful, not inflexible at all. Old Madame Luo was startled. Only then did she remember Master Liaochen's reputation. 4 decades, his predictions had never been wrong. She finally showed a look of surprise. Thank you, Master Liaochen. Thank you, Master Liaochen. Other than anything else, she would definitely add a large sum of money to the White Dragon Temple. Hearing this, the others breathed a sigh of relief. As for whether her injuries would be serious, when people were in desperate straits, a little bit of comfort was enough. At this time, their thoughts were almost the same as Jingwan's. As long as she was alive, there was hope. If something really happened, the Luo family would be able to support her for the rest of her life. Fu Yunting was the only one who didn't even have a scratch on his skin after falling off the cliff. He had helped save people before, and now he finally relaxed his clenched fists. He also felt a little less guilty. In fact, he had been blaming himself. If it wasn't for him, perhaps the Luo family's third daughter wouldn't have. The most regretful and distressed person was Sun Yilin. The situation of the woman he had fallen in love with was unknown, and his younger sister was seriously injured and unconscious. Most importantly, her face was injured. Such a deep and long cut, from the bottom of her earlobe to the corner of her mouth. If it was a little deeper and a little longer, it would have directly torn open the corner of her mouth. How terrible would that be? No matter how good the medicine was, it would be impossible for her to recover to her original state. Even if he just hoped that her face could be smoother, it would be very difficult. His younger sister could be considered as completely disfigured. He didn't need to say how important a woman's face was, especially in a family like theirs. His younger sister's marriage hadn't been decided yet. Without that face, there would be no value in a marriage alliance. It was conceivable that his father would not hesitate to give up his younger sister and support the concubine's younger sister. A woman who fell from the clouds into the mud would only receive more ridicule, humiliation, and trampling. Not to mention his concubine's younger sisters, who had always been at odds with his younger sister and were jealous of her. If they were allowed to gain power, his younger sister's fate was unimaginable. Jingwan being able to survive was naturally a blessing in disguise. However, this matter was far from over. Sun Yijia was the only legitimate daughter of Duke Ding, and Ruan Fengfei was the youngest legitimate daughter of the Grand Secretary of the Cabinet. Both of them were unmarried, and their value was far greater than their own. Because of Sun Yijia's disfigurement, she suddenly turned from a treasure to a broken piece of debris. Not to mention what would happen to Ruan Ruiz Hong, Duke Ding was bound to ask for an explanation. The so-called explanation, to put it bluntly, was to ask for benefits. Among the people involved in this matter, the one who could benefit the most from it was Ruan Ruiz Hong and Master Liaochen. The former was not easy to deal with, and his daughter had also been harmed. In addition, the cause of the accident was not Ruan Fengfei, so it would be difficult to extract benefits from him. The latter, on the other hand, was more valuable. If he could exchange Master Liaochen for a chance to defy the heavens and change his fate, Duke Ding wouldn't feel bad even if he lost all of his daughters, let alone one. Everyone knew what kind of person Master Liaochen was. Logically speaking, when such a big thing happened, he should have been the first to appear. If he came late, it could only mean that he had other important matters to attend to. The monks of White Dragon Temple wouldn't delay the rescue because of this, so naturally, no one could blame him. As for the beast that caused the trouble, they couldn't pin the crime of lax discipline on him just because he was in White Dragon Temple's territory. No one knew that an even more serious matter had happened on this mountain. Madame Luo and the others were anxiously waiting for Jingwan's return. As soon as the incident happened, each family had sent the news back to the capital as quickly as possible. The first person to know about everything here was naturally Li Hongyuan's father, Lu Qingdi. It could be imagined how angry he was when he learned about this matter. His son had been chased away by him for less than a day, and something had happened to him. He was besieged, fell off a cliff, fell into a river, and his life and death was unknown. So much so that he neglected the matter of Jingwan and the others falling off the cliff. At that time, Lu Chengdi had already finished dealing with political affairs and was drinking wine and enjoying the dance in the inner palace with beauties in his arms. When he heard the news, he smashed everything in front of him, and the beauties around him were also chased out. Therefore, in less than a quarter of an hour, the entire inner palace knew about the assassination of Jin Qinhuang. Once the inner palace knew, the court naturally also knew about it very quickly. The matter of the flower market hadn't been cleared up yet, and here there was an even more serious disaster. Moreover, Jin Qinhuang had just arrived at Bai Long Temple and was assassinated. It was hard not to link these two matters together. Thinking about the reason why Jin Qinhuang was punished, was it also a part of it? Was it someone who deliberately schemed against him? If this was really planned by someone early on, there would always be an illusion that there was an invisible big hand controlling the overall situation. It seemed that something really bad was going to happen, and the most prominent princes were all guessing who was the one who did it this time, and what was the reason for it. Although they all hated Li Hongyuan to death and almost every day cursed him to go to the 18 layers of hell, Li Hongyuan didn't have any conflict of interest with them. No matter how hateful he was, they couldn't deal with him. With Fu Huang's protection, if they made a move against him, wouldn't that be courting death? They were just waiting for him to make a mistake and then be tidied up by Fu Huang. Otherwise, they would just keep waiting until they were on the throne to tidy him up. This was something that everyone knew, but someone actually did it. Then the purpose was very obvious: to shift the blame. The several princes couldn't help but tense up. This matter wasn't done by them, so the person who did this wanted to deal with them, wouldn't it be them? If the other party wanted to shift the blame onto them, then it was necessary to create evidence that was unfavorable to them. If there were no loopholes around them, then the so-called shift wouldn't succeed. But with this kind of deliberate planning, could it be that they were confident? As soon as they thought that there must be a problem with one of the links in their hands that they didn't know about, fear and anger intertwined. They must investigate clearly. At the same time, Bai Long Temple also had to send people to investigate. Although they knew that it was a foolish act to act at this time, there was no news coming back from there. If they couldn't grasp some accurate information, they would be very passive. This wasn't like the flower market, where they could just give up and clean up the mess. If they didn't do anything and waited for the pot of *T to fall on their heads, then this battle for the throne could be withdrawn in advance. As his mother, Imperial concubine Su rushed to Lu Chengdi's place in an attempt to get more information. Imperial concubine Su didn't wail, and didn't even shed a tear. But her forbearance, restlessness, and panic were all seen by Lu Chengdi. "My dear concubine, don't worry. It's said that scourges live for 1,000 years. That evil creature is the scourge of scourges. It won't be so easy for something to happen to him." "Your Majesty, how can you talk about your own son like that?" Imperial concubine Su glared at him. Okay, I said something wrong. That's my son, the son of the dragon. Naturally, he will be protected by the heavens. Naturally, he will turn misfortune into good fortune and misfortune into good fortune. Imperial concubine Su softly hummed and wiped the corners of her eyes with a handkerchief. Although Yuan has a bad temper, he is the most filial. When he heard that this concubine missed the vegetarian food in by Long Temple, he sent someone to quickly send it back at noon. He has always been spoiled. Although this concubine didn't say it, I was afraid that he would suffer. But... Imperial concubine Su's voice was a little choked. It's all this concubine's fault. If I didn't send Yuan to Bai Long Temple, perhaps this wouldn't have happened. Why couldn't I pray for blessings? Why did I have to send him to Bai Long Temple? If elder sister were to find out, she would definitely blame me. Perhaps it was because she was too emotional, but Imperial consort Su spoke without thinking. Lu Chengdi's expression changed. No, Yuan will be fine. If something happens to him, this concubine will definitely make the person behind the scenes regret walking in this world. Imperial concubine Su felt his coldness and killing intent and couldn't help but feel a little frightened. She knew very well that Lu Chengdi might not have thought of passing the throne to Yuan, but Yuan position in his heart was definitely the most special among all the princes. He was so special that he was irreplaceable. He was so special that he would give up his favorite prince because of him. Lu Chengdi's reaction was a little slower, but he also had some connections that the ministers could think of. It was also at this time that Lu Chengdi's personal attendant returned. "Your Majesty, this servant has asked." Imperial concubine Su looked at Lu Chengdi with some confusion. In fact, she was also asking him if she should leave. Lu Chengdi looked at her comfortingly. "Speak." Chen Geng-yi, concubine Li, her maiden name is Chen, said that before she entered the palace, she was already not a virgin. That Mama Gong who examined her body had connections with her maiden family and helped her hide it. She didn't want this matter to be known by someone and secretly threatened her. A few days ago, she even told her that because she entered the palace and was favored, her maiden family became arrogant and domineering. They accepted bribes, forcibly occupied fertile land, and killed people. Each and every crime is unforgivable. If Chen Geng-yi doesn't listen, she will bring the matter of her maiden family to His Majesty. Last night, she received a message from that side, telling her to seduce Jin Qin Wang. After the matter is completed, not only will they help her keep the secret, but they will also prove her innocence in front of His Majesty. They will also help her clean up the matter of her maiden family and ignore any future troubles. That personal attendant lowered his head and answered truthfully, not daring to hide anything. Imperial concubine Su was very surprised. Perhaps she thought that Lu Chengdi was right next to her and was afraid of hurting his face. She hurriedly covered her mouth with a handkerchief to hide her expression. Beloved concubine doesn't need to cover it up. Zhen is also very surprised. Lu Chengdi said indifferently. Relatively speaking, Lu Chengdi's temper was relatively good. These past few years, when he lost his temper, 7 out of 10 times, it was because of Li Hongyuan. Almost every time, he would fly into a rage. But when he was truly furious, he was actually very calm. Every time he was like this, it meant that the consequences of the matter would be very serious. The angriest and calmest time was when he strangled her to death with his own hands. Even for someone like Imperial concubine Su, at this time, her heart was beating faster and faster. The so-called thunder and rain were the grace of the monarch. This sentence was not false at all. No matter how many tricks you used, no matter how much honor and favor you were, one sentence from him could make you lose everything. When you couldn't hold him in the palm of your hand, you were destined to be controlled by him. Don't blame imperial concubine Su for being the most favored in the harem for more than 20 years and still being afraid of him. Also, don't blame so many people for wanting his throne. Take all the palace servants around Chen Gung-yi into custody. Gather all the palace concubines and palace servants in the harem to watch them being interrogated. Those who don't speak will be beaten to death. Beloved concubine, go take a look too. He gently patted Imperial concubine Su's shoulder. Imperial concubine Su's hands and feet were ice cold. Her hands and feet were stiff like a puppet as she bowed and left. Those who don't speak will be beaten to death. Let's not talk about whether Chen Gengyi's palace maids knew about her and whether they were the ones who helped the mastermind to threaten Chen Gengyi. If they couldn't say anything, they would die. If they didn't know and said something, they would still die. If they really were a spy, they would still die. This meant that all the palace servants who previously served Chen Geng-yi will be beaten to death. Lu Chengdi was killing the chicken to warn the monkey. He was using this method to tell everyone in the harem that he was the true master of the harem. If they wanted to cause trouble under his watch, they had to be prepared to be severely punished. Chen Geng-yi was not a virgin before entering the palace. As the monarch, he was deceived. In addition, she seduced his son. As the saying goes, deceiving the monarch first and intending to wear a green hat later, Lu Chengdi had eyes but failed to see, and pampered her for several months. It could be said that this made him lose all face. This kind of thing should have been tightly covered up, but Lu Chengdi did the opposite. It could be said that he was announcing it to the harem. With such an open cover, how many courtiers would not know? An emperor who didn't even care about his own face. Then what exactly did he want to do? It was terrifying to think about. Perhaps because he had vented some of his anger, Lu Chengdi's mood calmed down a lot. He firmly believed that his evil son would not die so easily. Finally, he seemed to remember that there seemed to be another matter. He took the letter again and read it carefully. The letter was concise and to the point. It only explained the cause of the incident and the people who fell off the cliff. The situation of those people was still unknown. It seemed that the next letter would be after the result of the incident. Lu Chengdi frowned. He was not sure whether the two things were related. After all, it was a sudden accident on the other side. His son was assassinated here. He had reason to suspect that the killers deliberately created chaos to lure the monks of White Dragon Temple away. Without the help of the monks of White Dragon Temple, it would be easier to assassinate his son. If this was really the case, then the whole thing would become more complicated and troublesome. If it was just a coincidence, then it wouldn't be much less troublesome. Some people might try to link the two things together. After all, it was easier to fish in muddy water. In this way, Lu Chengdi had to consider the worst case. None of the old foxes in the imperial court were easy to deal with. Lu Chengdi had a headache. These bastards couldn't stop. He secretly made up his mind that he would punish the mastermind severely once he caught him. After thinking about it, he still couldn't come up with a good result. Therefore, without saying anything, he summoned all the elders of the people involved in the letter to the palace. It seemed that they had already known about it. Of course, the elders of Fu Yunting were excluded. Only he, who was paralyzed in bed, was not dead, probably because of his nephew's marriage. He was not dead, but just like a living dead. Lu Chengdi directly threw the trouble to them. He said very straightforwardly, "What do you want? Tell me. I will try my best to satisfy you. If your request is too excessive, get out of my way. Anyway, it has nothing to do with me." Although he said it euphemistically, Lu Chengdi clearly meant this. Yuan Qiao and Zhou Yingshuang's father were a little flattered and didn't know what to say for a while. Perhaps because his father-in-law, Luo Peishan, was here, Yuan Qiao's father wanted to follow his lead. However, Luo Peishan had his back to him. It was not convenient for him to speak, so he could only keep silent. Although Ruan Ruizhong looked calm, there was unspeakable worry in his eyes. He took the initiative to say, "Your Majesty, no matter what happens to my daughter, it is her own fate. This matter has nothing to do with your majesty. It is my honor to receive your majesty's favor. It is my daughter's honor. I dare not ask for anything more from your majesty. That was why people said that the Grand Secretary of the Cabinet was extraordinary. Hearing these words, Lu Chengdi felt that it was ironic. Compared with Lu Chengdi, Duke Ding was not very happy. He cursed twice fiercely. You know how to pretend to be a good person. Your Majesty, the specific situation is still unknown. It is better to wait until it is clear. He didn't care about Sun Yijia's safety, but he didn't know the specific situation. It was not good for him to speak. If she died, naturally, he could get the most benefits. She was his favorite, not his treasure. If she was seriously injured, it would be best if the emperor could solve her future for her. If she was lucky and only suffered minor injuries, then it would be best to make it as serious as possible. In short, the abacus in his heart was crackling. I Ching Luo, what do you think? Lu Chengdi saw that Luo Peishan was silent, so he asked. Your Majesty, this subject believes that this subject's granddaughter will be safe and sound. Therefore, this subject has no request. Lu Chengdi looked at him and was quite surprised. Luo Peishan usually didn't speak like this. However, looking at his appearance, he really didn't mean what he said. However, didn't this mean that he really valued his family's younger generation? Only if he truly cared would he wholeheartedly hope for her safety and not ask for anything else. Okay, I got it. As for the other two people, Lu Chengdi was too lazy to pay attention to them. They were purely going through the motions. At worst, they would be rewarded after the event. This was already the most benevolent thing they could do. If it were any other time, Lu Chengdi wouldn't care even if a few more people in his family died. After the people were rescued, the families naturally sent letters to him. Lu Chengdi was the only one who had not received any news from his evil spawn. The waiting process was always worrying. The longer it went on, the more impatient he became. The servants who served him were punished one after another because of some trivial things that no one would care about. At first, it was only 10 strokes of the cane. Then, it increased to 20, 50, and finally, they did nothing. Even if they just knelt on one side, he would vent his anger on them and beat them to death directly. Even the closest ones were not unscathed. Tomorrow, at least half of the servants in his palace would be replaced. Naturally, the imperial concubines were paying attention to Lu Chengdi's situation. They kept quiet out of fear and couldn't help but hope that Li Hongyuan was fine. No matter how much he was hated, as long as he was not provoked, he would not stir up trouble in his father's harem. However, Lu Chengdi's anger was different. If something went wrong, they would be implicated. If Lu Chengdi, who didn't sleep all night, knew that his son's life was not in danger and he was sleeping in a tender place all night, would he be so angry that he would vomit blood and die? Digression. https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/6652956. HTML. Click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicon.com. Bicon. Com mobile version reading website. Bicon.com. Chapter 75. Old Madam, third young lady is back, third young lady is back. Old Madam Luo's maid was so happy that she didn't even care about etiquette and hurried to the guest room where old Madam Luo was staying. Her voice could be heard from far away. If it was in the past, the mothers would have reprimanded her, but now the situation was different. Not only did they not reprimand her, they were so happy that they all went to report the good news to old Madam Luo. It had been nearly 20 hours since the accident. Even if old Madam Luo knew that Jing Wan was still safe, she didn't see her and didn't know how her injury was. She couldn't stop worrying. She almost didn't sleep all night and didn't eat anything. She was already old. How could she withstand such torment? Everyone was worried that she would fall ill, but it was useless no matter how they tried to persuade her. Because if they tried to persuade her, old Madame Luo would look at them coldly. She was not your child, of course you don't care about her. What's more, you don't want to see a group of heartless people around me. It was indeed difficult to understand that kind of anxiety and torment if one didn't experience it personally and didn't see something happen to one's loved ones. After old Madame Luo said such harsh words, no one dared to say a word. They just hoped that third young lady could come back soon. Luo Jinghua, on the other hand, stayed by old Madame Luo's side and didn't say anything comforting. He only said to old Madame Luo at the beginning, "If my sister is really not well, I will take care of her for the rest of my life. If I die before my sister, I will leave behind my last words and ask my children and grandchildren to treat their aunt and grand-aunt like how they treat me. Otherwise, they will be expelled from the family." These words might sound like cursing Jingwan, but it was the most sincere and practical care. Old Madame Luo took his hand and almost burst into tears. "Good, good, good. You are all good children, good children. This is fate, it may be in this life. It's rare to meet someone who is worth it. You have to cherish, cherish, cherish." The grandfather and grandson stopped talking about Jingwan, although they were waiting for her. Luo Jinghua told old Madame Luo some interesting things in the capital and talked about the various friends he made. He tried to distract old Madame Luo as much as possible, so that the grandfather and grandson, who were not very close, were quite close in this short period of time. Even when she couldn't take it anymore and closed her eyes to take a nap, Luo Jinghua never left. Finally, she came back. Old Madame Luo suddenly, she seemed to wake up. "Wan is back?" "Yes, grandmother. Little sister is back." Luo Jinghua was also very happy. He quickly helped her up with the servant girls. Madame Luo had not changed her clothes to begin with, so she stopped the maid from combing her hair and hurriedly walked out. But Jingwan. She was worried as Jingwan. How could Jingwan Luo worry not worry to worry? Luo, Mississippi. After waiting for the people who went to find her, she immediately went back without saying anything. Before that, she had already treated the wound on her neck. Some things with traces of Li Hongyuan were also wiped clean. On the way back, the others were worried that she couldn't bear the long journey. After all, the road was full of potholes. Before walking from the foot of the mountain to White Dragon Temple, it was basically impossible to step on a flat ground. More importantly, the journey was very long. Unexpectedly, Jingwan didn't slow them down at all. On the contrary, the servants of the Luo family didn't rest for a while and continued on the road. They were very tired. Their speed was even slower than that of the 70 or 80 old people. If they walked slowly like this, they didn't know when they could return to White Dragon Temple. Jingwan decided to go first with the two monks. To some extent, this decision was very risky. The monks from White Dragon Temple were young, not old. They were all young and strong. Of course, if they could come to find Jingwan together, there was absolutely no problem with their character. They were all devoted to Buddha and abided by the rules and precepts. But the people of the Luo family didn't know. How could they be assured to let their miss follow these two foreign men? Even if nothing happened, if they were seen by others, their miss's reputation would definitely be affected. But Jingwan couldn't continue to wait. Once emotions took the upper hand, it was difficult to suppress them with reason. She was willing to believe in the people of White Dragon Temple and gamble. From the beginning to the end, the two monks were neither sad nor happy. They knew that the servants of the Luo family didn't trust them, so they didn't explain or promise anything. After Jingwan made the decision, they dutifully escorted Jingwan back to White Dragon Temple. To Jingwan's surprise, she didn't meet anyone along the way. At first, she thought it was because it was remote. Later, she gradually found that something was wrong. It was daytime, and the foot of the mountain in front of White Dragon Temple was very lively. It turned out that the two monks quietly avoided other people and protected Jingwan in their own way, putting an end to the worries of the servants of the Luo family. Thank you very much, masters. Benefactress, you are too polite. One of them said. This was the first time that Jingwan heard them speak since she saw them. Entering the guest room in the backyard of White Dragon Temple, Jingwan saw Nurse Gong and others waiting there from a distance. She felt as if she had been separated from them for a lifetime. Seeing that Jingwan could move freely and didn't seem to be seriously injured, she was really surprised. Although Nurse Gong had known it, she still showed her joy at the right time, saying that it was God's blessing. However, Jingwan felt that Nanny Gong's gaze was constantly on the handkerchief wrapped around her neck. Originally, Jingwan didn't pay much attention to the bite mark, but under Nanny Gong's gaze, she felt an inexplicable sense of guilt. Don't worry, Nurse Gong. It was scratched when I fell down. It will be fine after some rest. How could Nurse Gong not know whether she had such a wound on her neck or not? She didn't need to think to know what was going on. Miss, you have suffered. I will take a look at you later. I think the wound is not deep. If you take good care of it, it won't leave a scar. Okay. Although she said that, she felt more guilty in her heart. What was going on? Miss, do you want to take a bath first or go to see old madam first? I will go to see grandmother first. She clearly knew that it was not easy to survive a fall from such a high place and that she was extremely lucky. If she still dressed neatly and beautifully, the first impression people would have upon seeing her would not be to admire her beauty, but to suspect that she was hiding something. She might as well let her grandmother see her current appearance and feel more at ease. As she walked inside, she asked about other people's conditions. After hearing about old Madame Luo's words and deeds, she felt guilty, but also touched and warmed. Needless to say, the servants had all been properly settled. Yuan Xiao broke her leg and injured her lungs. It was likely that she would suffer from chronic illness in the future. Zhou Yingshuang injured her head and accumulated a large blood clot. Master Liaochen personally examined it and said that she might lose her sight. There were several other injuries on her body, all of which were different degrees of bone damage. However, compared to her injuries, they weren't that serious. Jingwan's lips moved, but she didn't know what to say. What about Sister Jia? Miss Sun's injuries were the least serious. Jingwan sighed in relief. It wasn't bad news. Gong Mama sighed inwardly. She's also the most serious. Jingwan's anger was stifled before she could finish speaking. Her heart ached as she hurriedly asked, "What happened?" Miss Sun's face was injured from here to here. Gong Mama gestured to her own face. And it's very deep. It'll be difficult to smooth it out. Jingwan was stunned. She felt as if she had been struck by lightning. If it had been her own face, she would not have cared. However, it was different for these local girls. Their faces could be said to be more important than their lives. Wasn't it the most serious injury? Disfiguring her face was equivalent to losing half of her life. If she couldn't bear it, she might even commit suicide. Wan. Old Madame Luo's voice brought Jingwan back to her senses. She saw that old Madame Luo seemed to have aged a lot in one night. Her face was haggard and her hair was slightly messy. It was one thing to hear from Gong Mama and another to see it with her own eyes. For a moment, her heart ached and she quickly walked forward. Grandmother. Old Madame Luo didn't dare to hug her because she was worried about her injuries. Quickly tell grandmother, where are you injured? Why didn't you just lie down? Instead, you forced yourself to come and see grandmother? Grandmother, they're all superficial injuries. They didn't hurt my bones or my lungs. Don't worry, I'm really fine. How can you be fine after falling from such a height? Your clothes are already soaked. How dare you say you're fine? Jingbua, quickly go and ask Master Liaochen to take a good look at your sister. Old Madame Luo scolded while carefully touching Jingwan's neck. It was difficult to forget how it was injured after being noticed again and again. Jingwan resisted the urge to retreat. I'll go right now. Luo Jingbua somewhat believed his sister's words. After all, it had been a long time since she fell off the cliff. If her injuries were really serious, she wouldn't have this kind of energy. Although she looked haggard, it was more like she didn't rest well. Of course, he also noticed the slightly strange expression on Jingwan's face. A large group of people surrounded Jingwan. Jingwan naturally couldn't bring up going out to see other people, especially Sister Jia. Perhaps she also didn't want to see people. Master Liaochen probably had nothing to do at the moment. When Luo Jingbo went to invite him, he quickly came over. Master Liaochen never thought that he would see Jin Qinhuang's obsession in this kind of situation. He also confirmed that she was indeed his third fated person this year. Although he couldn't read her fortune anymore, it didn't hinder anything. After seeing Jingwan's face, he didn't show it on his face, but his heart was rather moved. She and Jin Qinhuang were both outliers. Although he couldn't see the specifics clearly, he could roughly guess one or two things. These two people should be together. After all, if they couldn't be together with each other in this lifetime, it wouldn't just be the two of them who changed their fates. Not to mention other things, Jingwan's original fate should have been peaceful and smooth for the first 10 years. After marriage, there would be a major turning point. Her fate would be bumpy and full of twists and turns. Even if her heart was firm and unyielding, in the end, she still couldn't escape the fate of death. Now that the difficult fate had been cut off, gradually showing signs of happiness, longevity, and good health. But it was still hazy, which meant that there might be some twists and turns. Because Jin Qinhuang forcibly changed her fate, naturally everything was going to be uncertain. Master Liaochen had always believed in letting nature take its course. Everything was decided by the heavens. However, there would always be some people that people couldn't bear. Jingwan's eyes were clear and gentle, her heart was open and kind. This kind of person shouldn't suffer so much. Jin Qinhuang insisted on changing her fate. Other than his obsession with her, wasn't it also because he owed her a debt? The grace of saving his life in the previous life, the grace of rebirth, that changed his fate. Wasn't this also destined? Jingwan had a good impression of Master Liaochen. This was a true senior monk, true to his name. His words were as one, his countenance benevolent. Greetings to Master. Amit Ba. Master Liaochen smiled. Miss Luo doesn't need to be so courteous. Jingwan lightly raised her eyebrows and smiled. Why doesn't Master call me Nu Shizhu? Does everyone else in Bai Long Temple call me that? Since there are still so many people who call me that, it doesn't matter if there's one less. Not inflexible, not pedantic, not damaging his temperament as a monk, but at the same time, it made people feel that he was their elder. That's true. My daughter will have to trouble Master here. It's not considered trouble. Miss originally had an accident at Bai Long Temple, so it's considered this poor monk's fault. Who can accurately predict something like a natural disaster? Master doesn't have to take the responsibility on himself. Jingwan's tone was light. It wasn't that she tacitly agreed with Master Liaochen's words, but that she thought of Sun Yijia and the others. They didn't do anything outrageous, but they ended up like this. Heaven really was unfair. Master Liaochen helped Jingwan take her pulse as he said, Severn's misfortune may be a blessing in disguise. Jingwan stared blankly. She wasn't sure if Master Liaochen saw through her thoughts and specially comforted her, but she had heard a lot about Master Liaochen's reputation on the way here. Master is right. My daughter thought wrongly. Master Liaochen nodded. Miss Luo's body is fine. Just apply some medicine for bruises and it'll be fine. There's no need to drink medicine. Many thanks, Master. Grandmother will be relieved to hear your words. Jingwan had wanted to ask about Li Hongyuan. Master Liaochen probably knew about the assassination attempt, but she swallowed the words back down. It wasn't because Mama Gong and the servant girls were present, but it wasn't something she could ask about. Miss Luo, don't worry. Everything is fine. As long as Miss Luo stays true to herself, everything will be resolved. It was true that Master Liaochen left a good impression, but why didn't she understand what he was saying? On the surface, it seemed very simple, but why did she feel like there was more to it? More importantly, Master Liaochen seemed to be able to see through people's hearts. He could give her plausible answers no matter what she was thinking. Meeting Jingwan's puzzled gaze, Master Liaochen smiled but didn't say anything. Miss Luo, you still need to rest. This poor monk will leave first. Jingwan hurriedly got up to see him out. Madame Luo and the others were worried that too many people would disturb Master Liaochen, so they waited outside. When they came out, Madame Luo hurriedly got up to ask about it. Even though Jingwan had already explained that she had been lucky and had fallen in a special place, she had managed to survive. After confirming that Jingwan was really all right, Madame Luo couldn't help but say, "It's really Buddha's blessing." This situation was so similar to what had happened 2 days ago that everyone couldn't help but wonder if Jingwan had offended someone, which was why she had been in trouble for the past 2 days. If you ask me, Miss Luo has always been kind. You're in a sacred place of Buddhism, so Buddha naturally has to protect you, a servant girl said. However, she might be able to gain favor at other times, but now was not the right time. After all, so many people had been injured, especially Sun Yijia. Didn't this mean that she was usually a vicious person? Otherwise, why would Buddha give her such a cruel punishment of disfigurement? More than one person looked at her coldly. The servant girl seemed to have realized what had happened, and her face instantly paled. That cliff was so steep. It's naturally Buddha's blessing that no one died, Jingwan said. Master Liaochen was still the same. He didn't say much and even smiled amiably. Luo Jingbua saw him off again. Although Madame Luo was exhausted, she still urged Jingwan to rest first. If grandmother doesn't rest first, how can your granddaughter rest in peace? Madame Luo couldn't dissuade Jingwan, but now she did feel relieved and relaxed. She felt tired, so she agreed. However, she didn't forget to remind the people around her to visit Yuan Qiao often. Although she didn't have any feelings for her, she was still her granddaughter. Jingwan washed up in the wing room next door. 2 days ago, she was attacked by Li Hongyuan at night, so the marks on her back were naturally seen by the servant girls. However, Nanny Gong easily fooled the servant girls who didn't know what had happened. They mistook the kiss marks on Jingwan's back, which had faded a lot, as scratches caused by falling down the cliff. Fortunately, Li Hongyuan's marks were all over the place. Otherwise, it would be hard to explain. Even if there were scratches, they wouldn't be little red marks. From this point of view, it seemed that she had to thank Li Hongyuan. Nanny Gong's face darkened. The servant girls naturally thought that she was worried about Jingwan's injury. Is the injury on her back serious? I don't feel anything. Nanny Gong was worried that if she continued to talk, Jingwan would have doubts, so she changed the topic. The wound on Jingwan's neck was carefully treated by Nanny Gong. However, in the process, Jingwan always felt that Nanny Gong's gaze was going to pierce through her neck. She felt a little scared for no reason. Well, Nanny, even if there will be a scar, it's nothing to care about. Could Nanny Gong tell her that what she cared about was not whether there would be a scar, but the way the scar was left? She was easy to fool. Indeed, there's nothing to care about. Although the King of Hell was a bastard, he definitely wouldn't despise the girl just because she had a scar on her body. Moreover, this scar was caused by him. If he dared to have any thoughts about it in the future, Granny Gong might really fight him to the death. You're generous. Jingwan couldn't help but look at Nanny Gong. Why did the latter words sound so stiff? It looked no different from usual, but it felt weird. Nanny. Miss, which of the 3 girls do you want to visit first? Nanny Gong knew her well. She couldn't sleep peacefully if she didn't check on them. Nanny, you changed the topic too abruptly. Ying Shuang is still asleep, so I won't disturb her for the time being. I'll visit my cousin first, and then Sister Jia. In fact, she still didn't know how to face Sun Yijia. When Jingwan went out, she happened to meet the wife of Wu Anho's heir apparent. She was a newlywed and originally came to offer incense, but she didn't expect to encounter such an incident. Fortunately, Fu Yunting was fine. If a new widow came, then it would be. The wife of Wu Anho's heir apparent's family name was Wei. It didn't seem obvious now, but it was said that her ancestors were very prominent. Madame Wei was kind-hearted and had a straightforward personality. She had known Fu Yunting for a long time and could be said to be congenial. In the days after their marriage, they could be said to be in a good mood. She didn't expect to encounter such an incident. Although her husband wasn't injured, her bad mood naturally wouldn't come back easily. When she saw that Jing Wan was standing, she was really relieved. Her husband felt guilty and uneasy because of a strange woman. Even if he knew what happened, he still cared a little. Now, he should let go of the knot in his heart. On the contrary, it was the Luo family that owed him. Don't blame her for being snobbish or calculating. It was just that Wu Anho's situation was very bad now. As long as she could do something that would benefit Wu Anho's heir apparent, she didn't mind losing face. She was a woman, so it was more convenient for her to do certain things than a man. At this time, when she saw Jing Wan, the smile on her face was especially sincere. It's great that third Miss Luo is fine. I have to thank heir apparent Fu for being able to be safe and sound. Jing Wan first bowed to Madame Wei. It was a formal bow. This time, Madame Wei was a little embarrassed. She was only 3 years older than Jing Wan. Although 17 years old was a little late for marriage, because she was an old lady, it was one of the reasons why she was able to marry Fu Yunting. The officials of the Wei family were also military officials, so they didn't pay much attention to etiquette. However, they knew that Jing Wan's bow was too formal. Although she was the wife of the heir apparent of Wu Anho's heir apparent, in fact, there weren't many people who would take her seriously. They might even mock and ridicule her. She wasn't sure if this Miss Luo was too good at being a person or if she was sincere and not pretentious. You can't. Get up quickly. Both parties exchanged some pleasantries. Although there was nothing substantial, when Madame Wei left, both parties seemed to be quite happy. With the situation in Wu Anho's heir apparent, I don't know what will happen to the wife of the heir apparent in the future. Jing Wan was quite emotional. Wu Anho's heir apparent may not be without any changes. It depends on whether Wu Anho's heir apparent could survive until Emperor Lu Cheng's death. It depends on the attitude of the next emperor towards Wu Anho's heir apparent. Jing Wan understood Nurse Gong's unfinished words. In fact, what Nurse Gong wanted to say was, "It depends on what the King of Hell thinks." Yuan Xiao's temporary guest room was just next door, separated by a wall. However, Yuan Xiao just happened to drink the medicine and fell asleep. Jing Wan just looked at her pale sleeping face. Perhaps she hadn't recovered from the shock yet. Even though she had taken the sedative, she still couldn't sleep very well. She coughed from time to time. A lively and active girl who had a clear distinction between love and hate was lying here like this. She might be weak and sickly in the future. Take good care of her. If she needs anything, don't hesitate to find me over there. When she wakes up, send someone to inform me. Yes. The person who waited on Yuan Xiao responded. Zhou Yingshuang also stayed here. Jing Wan naturally went to take a look. She asked some simple questions and then went to Sun Yijia's place. Ding General Manor also had a fixed residence in White Dragon Temple. When the people of Ding General Manor came, they basically stayed there. It was some distance away from the Luo residence. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652957. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile version reading website. Bicken.com. Chapter 76. Sun Yijia's attention was on the flowers and trees in the courtyard, while everyone else's attention was on her. Naturally, they did not notice Jing Wan's arrival. Jingwan stepped on a small branch beside her foot. Although the sound was soft, because the courtyard was quiet enough, almost everyone heard it and subconsciously turned their heads. Sun Yijia's dull eyes lit up. She opened her mouth to call out to her, but just as she opened her mouth, she subconsciously covered her face and let out a soft hiss. Her beautiful brows furrowed and she pursed her lips. Obviously, because she suddenly opened her mouth, she had pulled on her wound. But other than that, she did not have any other emotions and waved at Jingwan. The moment Sun Yilin saw Jingwan, his gloomy eyes finally lit up. It seemed that other than some minor injuries, she was actually considered to be unharmed. He was happy from the bottom of his heart. Just as he was about to say something, he saw Jingwan squat down as a greeting and then walked into the room. Sun Yilin looked at his sister again. Indeed, she was standing up and walking back into the room. "Miss Luo." Sun Yilin called out to her. Jingwan stopped in her tracks and looked at him. "Is something the matter, young Master Sun? Although Yijia and you have only known each other for a short period of time, in fact, I have never seen her so close to any other girl. Even if it was her own sister, to her, it was only on the surface. In reality, she was like a complete stranger. She is like a real sister to you. Now that she has met with such a disaster, in the future, I hope that Miss Luo can console her. Sister Yijia treats me with sincerity, so I will naturally treat her with sincerity. You want the best for her, and I am no exception. Thus, there is no need for young master to say anything more. I will do my best." Sun Yilin nodded and did not say anything else. Jingwan walked straight into the room. Sun Yijia sat by the table and gestured for her to sit. Jingwan didn't care about etiquette or rules. She didn't even try to avoid it. She just looked straight at her face. For people who didn't know her well, this was indeed very rude. However, if people who were close to her blindly avoided it, that kind of subtle and deliberate indifference would be even more uncomfortable. Half of her face was covered by a white cloth, and a thin white thread wrapped around the top of her head and chin. The white thread was handled very carefully, and it covered up as much as possible. This was also the reason why Jingwan didn't see any obvious marks on the other side. Sun Yijia reached out and pulled her to sit down. She then waved her hand at the people serving her, indicating for them to leave. Jingwan understood that she wanted to talk to him alone, so he asked his men to leave. After all, Sun Yijia's wet nurse was still worried. Before she left, she couldn't help but say a few words. "It's not suitable for Miss Luo to speak for the time being. So, Miss Luo..." Sun Yijia reached out to stop her. It was obvious that she didn't want to listen to the nagging of the people around her. From the moment she was rescued, there had been chaos around her. First, they cried helplessly. Then, they felt sorry for her and cursed the heavens and the earth. They repeatedly said what she should do in the future. Seeing that she was expressionless, they began to persuade her. They talked about her identity and how she was doted on at home. Not only Duchess Ding, but also the old madam and the Empress also liked her the most. Even if her face was hurt and disfigured, she would definitely have a good marriage. In the future, her husband's family would definitely not dare to treat her badly. Sun Yijia wasn't stupid. How could she not know what it meant to be disfigured? So what if they talked about it? Some things were already destined when the sharp stone cut her face. She didn't respond. Everyone thought that she was disheartened and depressed. In fact, that wasn't the case. Her tolerance wasn't that bad. On the contrary, her heart was almost strangely calm. She actually wanted to tell them that she was fine, but she knew that no one would believe her, including her fifth brother. Thus, she chose to remain silent. This kind of silence made the people around her feel more and more sorry for her. They even sympathized with her, forming a vicious cycle. In the end, under her cold gaze, everyone finally shut their mouths. However, everyone's silence was equally unbearable. Jingwan's arrival was her savior. "Sister Jia, are you okay?" Jingwan believed that she was good at judging people when she made a mistake. She always felt that Sun Yijia didn't seem to care about her disfigurement. Perhaps it was because she was too concerned, or perhaps it was a deep-rooted belief that a girl wouldn't care about her appearance. That was why the people around her were so nervous and careful. They didn't sense Sun Yijia's true feelings at all. However, Jingwan wasn't very sure, so she asked directly. Sun Yijia nodded without hesitation. Apart from the pain on her face and the bruises on her body, she was no different from usual. Jingwan heaved a sigh of relief. That's good. Sun Yijia narrowed her eyes slightly and smiled. She took out the 4 treasures of the study from her room. After grinding them, she began to write. It's great that you're fine. I knew Sister Wan was different from others. You believed whatever I said and didn't think that I was pretending to be strong to comfort you. There's no need to lie about such things. If you really lost something you cared about, no matter if you threw a tantrum or stayed silent because you were sad, there's nothing to blame you for. You don't have to suffer and suppress yourself for the sake of accommodating others. Others should be tolerant and understanding of you. Sun Yijia nodded and wrote again. As expected, Sister Wan knows me best. As she wrote, she sighed silently. It's been more than 10 years. Why can't I compare to the few times we met? It's probably the so-called bosom friend. Sun Yijia was stunned. Yeah, isn't it, the so-called bosom friend? True bosom friends aren't the people closest to you. After seeing Sun Yijia's state, Jingwan went straight to the point and went straight to the heart of the matter. Sister Jia, what are you going to do in the future? Sister Wan, when you harden your heart, you're really hurtful. The scar hasn't even formed a scab yet, but you're ruthlessly tearing it open again. You just have to face the cruelest reality. I just believe that Sister Jia isn't someone who would run away. Sun Yijia looked at Jingwan's clear eyes that were filled with sincerity. She cared about her from the bottom of her heart. She cared only about her as a person, and not about the things that were attached to her. Sister Wan, do you know? My face shouldn't have been injured so badly. I did it on purpose. When I touched that sharp stone, I subconsciously tilted my head. I wasn't sure if I could avoid it if I tilted my head in the other direction, or if my face wouldn't be injured. At that time, my only thought was that if my face was gone, my value would also be gone. They wouldn't have to deliberately think about how to use me in exchange for the greatest benefits. Jingwan looked at the words on the paper. She reached out and rubbed it before throwing it into the incense burner. Sun Yijia took out another piece of paper. Sister Wan, aren't you being too cautious? Jingwan didn't say anything. Instead, she took the brush and wrote. Who am I doing this for? If someone else saw this and your parents heard about it, would you have a good life? I didn't expect Sister Wan's handwriting to be so good. Jingwan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Is this the time to talk about this? I already don't have a good life. How bad can it be? She knew very well how the people in her family would react. The only people who truly cared about her were probably only a few. Wu Gu, her grandmother, her wet nurse, or the 2 maids who grew up with her. Even her mother, for herself, for her children and grandchildren, would still give her up even if she was her only daughter. The only thing that was better than the others was that they probably wouldn't humiliate her. If they still had a little bit of kinship and a little bit of conscience, they might marry her to a man who was barely passable, instead of purely making use of trash and squeezing out the last bit of value she had. Is it worth it? Was it worth it to go to such an extent and fall into the dust just to escape the fate of being controlled by her family, or to fight for a bit of pride? What if I say it's worth it? Jingwan nodded. Then it's worth it. Sister Wan, you're so good. This kind of behavior clearly deserved a harsh reprimand. She was rebellious, she didn't know what was good for her, she didn't know how to appreciate her good fortune. Her 5th brother wouldn't approve of this behavior, but Jingwan, if she said it was worth it, she would stand on her side without hesitation. You have to finish the path you chose even if you have to kneel. It's good that you don't regret it. Sister Wan, are you worried that I can't endure hardship? Actually, the situation is far from the worst. Wu Gu will always protect me, and grandmother won't ignore me. There will be more people who will mock and ridicule me if I don't have enough food and clothes. There will be fewer people who will order me around, and there will be more unruly servants. That's all. However, I'm afraid that in order to protect me, he will be threatened into making compromises. After all, he's a close official of the emperor and has an advantage over others in many things. He's a man, and his talent isn't bad. Even if there are some troublesome matters, he can find a way to deal with it himself. Moreover, a man needs to know when to yield and when to stand tall. It's not a bad thing to use these things as training. When he can easily deal with the schemes of his family, why should he be afraid of those outside? Moreover, you're his biological sister. It's only right for him to protect you and do things for you. Since you're related by blood in this life, since your relationship is harmonious, you should cherish it and protect it. Sister Wan, what you mean is that I don't need to feel guilty if he makes compromises and forgives for me. On the contrary, I can order him around as much as I want. If he helps me, that's what he should do. If he doesn't, then he's incompetent, right? That's what you mean, right? Sun Yijia looked at her with sparkling eyes like a child's. She was a little excited, as if she had discovered something incredible and was waiting for her approval. In the words of her previous life, she was asking for praise. Jingwan felt helpless again. The more she interacted with Sun Yijia, the more she felt that she was seriously inconsistent with the rumors. She looked arrogant on the outside but was actually very rebellious on the inside. She was also a little naughty. In the past, perhaps she had been hiding it so well that even she didn't realize it. Jingwan wasn't sure if she had revealed this side of her. If she had, then she had really sinned. She knew that Sun Yijia was deliberately misinterpreting her words. Looking at her little expression and the wound on her face, she looked pitiful. Jingwan braced herself and nodded. You can understand it that way. Seeing her squinting her eyes like a little fox, Jingwan silently mourned for Sun Yilin in her heart. If he was tricked by her sister in the future, please don't blame it on her. Since Sun Yijia was prepared to face the future, Jingwan didn't say anything more. It was meaningless. Jingwan looked at her face again. In the future, don't do this kind of thing again. It wasn't good to hurt oneself to achieve one's goal. This time, it was just a coincidence. I just made the disaster that I couldn't avoid more serious. I never thought of doing it on purpose. Sister Jia, it's good that you know. Sister Wan, are you worried that I will do something extreme if I encounter something in the future? No, just like what you told me before, it's okay to cry occasionally, but you have to find the right person to cry to. You have to cry to the person who cares about you. It's the same principle. If you lose your value, even if you die, some people may not shed a single tear. Young miss, Duchess Ding is here. Suddenly, Mama Gong's voice sounded from outside. Sun Yijia was stunned. Although she knew that someone would come, she didn't expect her mother to come in person. In Sun Yijia's opinion, the most likely person to come was her sister-in-law. Taking advantage of the time, Jingwan quickly put away all the used papers on the table. She didn't hide them and just casually covered them with white paper. She would take them away later. She calmly drank tea and ate her tea. She didn't feel guilty or flustered at all because she had done something bad. Sun Yijia felt ashamed of herself for being inferior to her calmness. After that, the people who were chased out by Sun Yijia came in one after another. If the madam came and saw that all the servants were outside, she would definitely be at the front. Then, a large group of people came in. Sun Yijia suddenly felt that she was overthinking. She originally thought that her mother actually cared about her daughter very much, but in fact, that wasn't the case. Her sisters-in-law were all here. What was going on? Were they here to laugh at her? Even if these so-called sisters-in-law wanted to come in the name of caring for her sister-in-law, as long as her mother's attitude was firm, she could completely refuse them. Her sisters-in-law didn't have the guts to disobey her mother. Oh my, did our sister Jia really hurt her face? What should we do? A young woman who was dressed very solemnly and gorgeously was the first to enter the room. Her tone and expression were unmistakably concerned, but the gloating in her eyes was too obvious. She poked Sun Ijia's face with her long fingernails. Sun Ijia evaded her with an expressionless face and looked coldly at her fourth sister-in-law. Obviously, Sun Ijia was still high and mighty, and arrogant, even though her face was disfigured. This made the young woman furious. She lowered her voice and said, "Sister-in-law, I'd like to see how long Sister Jia, who has turned into an ugly monster, can remain arrogant." "Fourth sister-in-law, mother is here. It's your turn to walk in front." A group of people came in later, and another woman behind Duchess Ding spoke up. "Oh, mother, don't be angry. Your daughter-in-law was just worried about Sister Jia for a moment." "I definitely didn't." "Enough." Duchess Ding waved her hand impatiently and then her gaze fell on Sun Ijia. She looked at her face. Although there was concern and worry, it was very limited. There were more complicated expressions mixed with all kinds of emotions. Sun Ijia greeted her with a cold expression, just like how she usually greeted her mother. Duchess Ding's lips moved, but there were some words that she didn't say out loud. Before she came, she had already had a fierce argument with Duchess Ding about her. In the end, she compromised. "Since you're injured, take good care of yourself. Don't think so much." Duchess Ding was about to ask Sun Ijia's wet nurse about the specific condition of the injury on her face and whether it was really impossible for her to recover. However, she inadvertently found that there was an outsider here. Seeing that there was a white cloth wrapped around her neck, she was one of the girls who had an accident. "Which family are you from?" Although Jing Wan had been to Duke Ding's mansion, the only person who had an impression of her was Sun Ijia's eldest sister-in-law. She was usually smooth and slick, but at this time, she chose to remain silent. "Jing Wan of the Luo family greets Duchess Ding." When everyone heard this, the expressions on their faces were a little subtle. Duchess Ding's eyes were even a little unfriendly. "You're the one who asked Big Sister Jia to come out? Why is Big Sister Jia's face hurt? Why are you standing there? Oh, by the way, it seems that you fell into the river below. You're really lucky and tough." That pair of beautiful eyes now had an irritating look of scrutiny. She looked at Jing Wan as if she was looking at something strange. Jing Wan knew very well that there was definitely more than one person who had similar thoughts. It was nothing more than venting their anger and giving them a target to vent their anger. However, Jing Wan's good temper was also relatively speaking. If you treated her with courtesy, she would naturally treat you equally. Jing Wan glanced at the others. There were many people who wanted to watch a good show, including Duchess Ding, who looked indifferent. However, Sun Ijia's face was a little ugly, and anger appeared in her eyes. Seeing that she was about to lose her temper, Jing Wan spoke first. "May I ask if you're speaking on behalf of Duke Ding's mansion or yourself?" The other party was stunned. Obviously, she didn't expect Jing Wan to react like this. "So what if I'm speaking on behalf of Duke Ding's mansion? So what if I'm speaking on behalf of myself?" Her expression became contemptuous. In her opinion, there was no difference between the two. Duchess Ding frowned slightly and looked at Jing Wan with her eyes wide open. She suddenly felt a sharp spirit from this indifference. "If I'm speaking on behalf of Duke Ding's mansion, then I'll take some time to go to Duke Ding's mansion and ask your old madam if the rules of your family are different from those of other families. How can you be so presumptuous and rude?" When she said this, her eyes were still very calm as she looked at Duchess Ding calmly. In the entire Duke Ding's mansion, the person with the highest status was old Madam Sunday. It was normal to directly ignore Duchess Ding. Not to mention Duchess Ding, the faces of the large group of people who had just come in became a little ugly. This slap didn't just land on one person's face. Sun Ijia's fourth sister-in-law's face was the ugliest. She secretly glanced at Duchess Ding's face. She wanted to use this mother-in-law to teach this B*TCH who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth a lesson. However, if this matter was implemented, she would be stripped alive. Of course, I'm speaking on behalf of myself. So what? Oh, on behalf of yourself? Jing Wan answered in a low voice with a little carelessness. She brushed the cuff of her right hand with her left hand and looked down at her palm. Her intention to hit someone was so obvious that the woman subconsciously took a step back. Slap. A crisp sound shocked everyone. The woman covered her face and tilted her head to look at Sun Yijia in disbelief. Yes, it was not Jing Wan who hit her, but Sun Yijia. The woman subconsciously raised her hand and wanted to hit back. Sun Yijia's face was indifferent. She even raised her head slightly and showed her injured face so that it would be easier for her to hit back. If she really hit back, no matter who was in the right, it would be unreasonable. The woman had to clench her fingers and withdraw her hand angrily. What's wrong? You don't dare to fight back? Sun Yijia opened and closed her mouth very slightly to avoid pulling the injury on her face as much as possible. After that, she slapped her again. This time, everyone was so shocked that they couldn't close their mouths. Although Sun Yijia's personality was usually cold, she was definitely the role model for many young ladies in the capital. No one dared to imagine that one day she would hit someone, because when this scene was played out, it could be imagined how great the shock it caused was. Yijia. Duchess Ding looked at Sun Yijia and frowned even more. Obviously, although Sun Yijia's behavior also surprised her, she was more angry. How could the daughter she taught be so rude? Unfortunately, her daughter, who used to do whatever she said and would immediately admit and correct her mistakes when she said she was wrong and do her best, didn't even look at her now. Sun Yijia's eyes were filled with unprecedented strong emotions. With hostility, she stared at her sister-in-law like a poisonous snake. Fourth sister-in-law, you don't know, right? Sister Wan originally planned to come to White Dragon Temple today, but I brought forward the time to yesterday afternoon. According to what you said, am I not the scourge? Among the 4 people in the carriage, I was the least injured. You are all cursing in your hearts why I didn't fall to my death directly, right? I let you down. Who told me to be so lucky? Even if you all died, it wouldn't be my turn. Because she deliberately lowered her voice, she even sounded like a malicious ghost who wanted to take people's lives. It was really frightening that a person who didn't get angry suddenly got angry. Yijia, look at yourself now. Why don't you shut up? Sun Yijia suddenly turned her head to look at Duchess Ding. What do I look like? If I'm not the same as what you think, it's naturally not good. Mother, don't think that I don't know what you and my father are thinking and what you want to do. I'm already like this. As she spoke, she covered her injured face with tears in her eyes. Anyway, I have nothing left. If anyone dares to insult me, don't blame me for doing something that will make Duke Ding's mansion lose face and make you regret it for the rest of your life. Yijia. Perhaps Sun Yijia had hit the nail on the head. When she saw Sun Yijia's disheartened look, her heart began to ache. After all, she was her only daughter. Although she had done her best to cultivate her for a purpose, she had still put in a lot of effort. Don't be silly. Who would dare to abuse you? Don't do anything stupid, okay? Sun Yijia coldly twitched the corner of her mouth, making it clear that she didn't believe it. Duchess Ding suddenly felt helpless to her daughter and couldn't help but soften her tone. Come home with me first, okay? We can talk about it when we get back. Go back. You'll ground me when we get back, lest I, an ugly person, go out and be pointed at and humiliated? Or do you want to go all the way and marry me off far away so that I can never step into the capital again? Why do you think so? Isn't that so? Mother, do you dare to swear that you and father don't have such plans? Swear on the lives of your children and grandchildren. If you lie, you'll have no descendants. Duchess Ding could no longer maintain her composure. Her eyes were burning with anger. Sun Yijia, how can you say such vicious words? Your brothers doted on you for nothing. Your nephews like you so much. How can you curse them? I'm vicious? I just want you to swear on them. If you and father really don't have such plans, you'll have a clear conscience. Duchess Ding was suddenly speechless and couldn't say anything. You have nothing to say? Tears fell from Sun Yijia's eyes as she recounted her endless grievances and sorrow. You abandoned me first. You didn't want me first. You used to hold me in the palm of your hand and always gave me the best because I was valuable. You didn't raise a daughter, but a precious object, waiting for the day to exchange for the greatest benefits for you. But after all, you gave birth to me and raised me. I should repay you, so I did whatever you asked me to do without any complaints. But now, my face is ruined and I'm worthless. Not only do you not pity me or comfort me, but you also sprinkle salt on my wound. It's said that kittens and puppies will develop feelings for each other after being raised for a long time. I feel that I'm not even as good as a kitten or puppy. The more she spoke, the more indignant she became. Jingwan had been looking at her coldly before, but when she saw Sun Ijia's face begin to bleed again, she hurried forward and said, "Sister Jia, don't say it. Don't say it." Duchess Ding stood there in a daze. She probably never thought that her daughter would have such thoughts in her heart, but there seemed to be nothing wrong with what she said. Because of this, she was deeply touched. Thinking about herself, wasn't she like this all her life? Was she wronged at that time? Was she resentful? She knew that kind of sorrow, but she still heartlessly wanted her daughter to repeat it. Jingwan's anxious voice woke her up. "Ijia, Ijia, it's my fault. I won't abandon you. I promise you that that day will never come. Believe me, okay?" Duchess Ding couldn't help but cry. It wasn't that she hadn't cried all these years, but she cried in front of Duke Ding. Her heart was cold and hard at that time, but now she was really crying for her daughter and for herself. Sun Ijia shook off her hand and buried her head in Jingwan's neck. "Mother, you can go out first. I want to be alone for a while." Okay. I'll listen to you. Don't talk anymore. Be careful of pain. It's not good to bleed too much." She wanted to say be careful of her face, but she was worried that it would touch her heart again. However, she was worried about leaving just like that. "Madam, you might as well go out first. Leave Sister Jia to me. I'll persuade her," Jingwan said when she saw that she was at a loss. At this moment, she really cared about Sun Ijia. "Okay, I'll have to trouble you, Miss Luo. https://www.beacon.com/11/11807/6652958. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.beacon.com. Biku Gur mobile reading website, Beacon.com. Chapter 77. After the irrelevant people left, Jingwan couldn't be bothered to comfort Sun Ijia anymore. "Older sister Jia, let me take a look at your wound." Sun Ijia, on the other hand, obediently allowed Jingwan to press her down to sit on the stool. Jingwan lifted her head and used a handkerchief to carefully wipe away the tears on her face. She then untied the white thread and gently lifted the white cloth. She saw the deep wound with the edges turned outwards. Blood was seeping out again. It was truly a bit frightening. Jingwan frowned. "Bear with it. What are you standing there for? Hurry and bring the medicine over." The wet nurse and servant girl finally recovered from their shock and hurriedly brought the medicine, white cloth, scissors, and other things to Jingwan. Jingwan's movements were gentle, steady, and quick. By the time she wrapped the wound with the white cloth again, the entire process didn't take long. "All right, you must be careful. Don't be as agitated as you were just now. Otherwise, who knows when this wound will heal." She smoothed the slightly wrinkled white cloth again. Only then did she notice that Sun Ijia had been looking up at her with an unusually focused gaze. She used her finger to scratch the tip of Sun Ijia's nose. "Why are you looking at me like that? Could it be that you admire me?" she joked. "That's right. Younger sister Wan is so nice and gentle. It's so easy to admire you. It's a pity that younger sister Wan isn't a man. Otherwise, even if I'm disfigured, I'll shamelessly stick to you and think of a way to marry you." "You're really so arrogant just because I said you're fat? If I were a man, would I still be so close to you? Of course, you don't know anything about me. Admiration is a big joke." Alright, don't talk anymore. Your face is still bleeding. It's fine. I'll speak softly. It won't affect my face. I just want to talk to younger sister Wan right now. Sun Ijia simply reached out and hugged her waist. She used the side of her face that wasn't injured to rub against Jingwan's chest coquettishly. Jingwan was speechless. She had never heard of a person's mind deteriorating when their face was injured. However, whether it was illness or other reasons, those who were in poor health would always be a little delicate. Jingwan wasn't really a 14-year-old girl. Although Sun Ijia was older than her, Jingwan actually treated her as a younger sister. Wasn't it natural for her to coax her younger sister? He let her hug him and stroked her hair from time to time. He was extremely patient and gentle. The maidservant serving by the side may not have felt anything, but Sun Ijia's wet nurse was greatly moved. Miss Luo was not only playing the role of a close friend, but also the role of an elder sister or even a mother. At this moment, she suddenly understood what her young lady lacked. Thinking about what her young lady said to the madam before, she could not help but feel extremely distressed. Perhaps her young lady had always been suffering in her heart, but she had never realized it. Now, she was unprecedentedly grateful to the third young lady of the Luo family. We always thought that my younger sister was cold and didn't like to get close to others. Now it seems that we were wrong. It's obvious that we didn't do enough. Our indifference made her heart cold. Under the pagoda tree in the courtyard outside, Sun Yilin stood beside Duchess Ding. Through the window, he saw that his younger sister was so attached to an outsider. At the same time, he felt slightly bitter in his heart, but at the same time, he yearned for the warmth between them. Miss Luo and my younger sister have only known each other for a few days. What does this mean? Third, Miss Luo's methods are too good and she's too good at pleasing others. So, she can even easily win over someone like my younger sister? Or is my younger sister an ungrateful wretch? Mother, your first reaction is similar, right? No. Duchess Ding denied it quickly and anxiously. Sun Yilin chuckled. He was one of the most romantic figures in the whole capital. His laughter was naturally very lethal. Many maids around him blushed. However, Duchess Ding, who was standing beside him, felt that he was mocking her. For some reason, there was a little helplessness and sadness in his laughter. She wanted to say something more, but she couldn't open her mouth and didn't know what to say. She had always been a strict and strong mother. She would only tell her children what to do, rather than patiently listen to their inner thoughts and then explain it to them in a soft voice. Mother, do you know why my younger sister proposed to come to White Dragon Temple in advance? It's because of me. Because I want to come. I have to rush back today and work for His Majesty tomorrow. Duchess Ding looked at him. She was not a person who could be easily fooled. If he really just wanted to come to White Dragon Temple, he could invite his friends instead of following them on the pretext of protecting his younger sister. He also wouldn't use his younger sister's mouth to lead a group of girls to travel in advance. Why? She thought of a possibility. Mother, according to fourth sister-in-law's words, the one who caused yesterday's incident is the culprit. If that's the case, am I the one with the toughest fate? In fact, I also think this is the most reasonable. After all, I blocked my eldest brother's way and covered the light of all the other brothers, making them pearls covered in dust. See, I am such a bane to my brothers and sisters. Sun Yilin answered the question very calmly. Nonsense. I know whether you blocked your eldest brother's way or not. As for the others, what pearls covered in dust? They are clearly a group of stubborn stones. It has nothing to do with you. Nonsense. When fourth sister-in-law said so, Mother, you didn't say that she was talking nonsense. Instead, you seemed to agree with what she said. You can't have a completely different attitude just because it's your son now. You don't have to be so obvious when you help your relatives instead of reason. Duchess Ding's lips trembled as she looked at her beloved son. Yilin, I know that you blame your father and me because of what happened to your sister. Are you going to talk to me like this just because of that? Aren't you cutting my heart with a knife? Sun Yilin still smiled. Mother, What's wrong with you? You make it sound so serious. Look, am I not the same as usual? It's not good to be different from what you think. Duchess Ding suddenly thought of what her daughter had said just now. When she heard her son's words, she almost covered her chest with her hand. Unconsciously, she and her children had been so estranged from each other. Mother, don't be like this. Several sisters-in-law are still watching over there. Maybe they will think that I have done something disgraceful and then spread it everywhere. My good reputation will be severely tarnished. The crime of being unfilial is really too serious. Duchess Ding subconsciously restrained the expression on her face. Sun Yilan's smile became gentler. Duchess Ding inexplicably felt that her son was a little scary. Mother, you just asked me, why? I'll tell you now. It's because I like the third miss of the Luo family. I want to get as close to her as possible while I still have some time. Let me guess. Are you saying in your heart that the third miss of the Luo family is really not a good person? It's obvious that she wants to use Yi Jia as a springboard to seduce me. Looking at her unpredictable expression, Sun Yilan smiled helplessly. You're the only one who treats your son as a treasure. Maybe in other people's hearts, I'm just a grass. My son is so outstanding. It's normal for any girl to like him. Yes, so it's normal for the third miss of the Luo family to like him. Even if she wants to get close to me through my sister, it's reasonable. Unfortunately, the only impression I give her is probably that I'm the brother of her good sister. Mother, are you thinking again, who does she think she is? Why can't she like my son? Duchess Ding's face turned pale when her thoughts were guessed again and again. Last night, Mother and Father discussed it for a long time. There are some bruises around your eyes. Maybe you didn't sleep all night. After my sister has no value in marriage, you will not let go of my marriage easily. The reason why I tell you this is to let you be mentally prepared. Unless the third miss of the Luo family is unwilling, I will marry no one but her. If you agree, everyone will be happy. If you don't agree, I naturally have to do something to achieve my goal. Originally, before my sister's accident, I wanted to take it slowly, but I suddenly realized that if my methods are too gentle, others will think that you are a pushover. Mother, don't try to secretly ruin the reputation of the third miss of the Luo family, and don't think about doing the same thing. Using Cousin Ruyu's hands, you will embarrass those girls who you don't like but try to get close to me. You know, Cousin Ruyu is now so hated among the noble ladies in the capital. Mother, you have to take at least half of the responsibility. Mother, I admit that your methods are good, but in my opinion, it's still a bit crude. In the past, I would intervene and stop you whenever I saw you. Most of the time, I pretended not to know and just tried to avoid those girls as much as possible because you are my mother and Ruyu is my cousin, and they are just outsiders. But after all, they are innocent. It's just because they are in love for the first time, and they gave me gifts in a roundabout way to avoid private dealings. They didn't do anything immoral or intolerable. I hope that Mother can be merciful in the future, and if the same method is used on third Miss Luo, I probably won't just stop her. You have to understand your son, after all, it's not easy for me to fall in love with her. Duchess Ding suddenly felt that she was like a clown in her son's eyes. At the same time, her son was not really obedient and docile. He just hid his sharp claws and teeth. Once he showed them, it might be as simple as seeing blood. I know that once I take a liking to her, it will probably be for the rest of my life. So, I don't care about her reputation, I don't care about her appearance, and I don't even care if she is a virgin. Even if I die, I will marry her memorial tablet. This was a real threat. Even if Duchess Ding really wanted to do something, she didn't dare to do it. If her son really wanted her and she really married into Duke Ding's mansion in the future, the more unbearable she was, the more others would only laugh at Duke Ding's mansion and her son. What I'm going to do next may make my brother feel threatened. Mother, you might as well tell him and Father directly that I'm not interested in Duke Ding's mansion. But if he really doesn't believe it and insists on making trouble for me, and Father tries his best to suppress me, then don't blame me for being impolite and really competing with him. Over the years, I have endured enough. If one day we really kill each other, it will be because of them. Duchess Ding looked at him. Before they set off yesterday, he was still a familiar person. In the blink of an eye, he had become so unfamiliar. Her son had really grown up and his wings were full. She could no longer hold him in the palm of her hand. She didn't know whether she should be happy or disappointed. Sun Yilin glanced at the people in the room again. Let my sister recuperate in White Dragon Temple. When she returns to Duke Ding's mansion, her wound will heal slowly. No one in the world will feel sorry for her, but there will always be one person who will. I'll go back first. With that, he bowed to Duchess Ding. Without waiting for her response, he turned around and left. He was straightforward and ruthless. Sun Yijia had enough of being in Jingwan's arms. She raised her head and happened to see Sun Yilin's back as he left, as well as her mother's side profile, which looked like she had lost her soul. I don't know what my fifth brother said, but mother seems to have been provoked quite a bit. You were not to be outdone before. Sun Yijia wanted to say something, but she saw that the maids in the room were still in a daze after being provoked just now. They had been serving her with all their might before and were all so loyal. But now the situation was different. It was not a good choice to continue to follow her master, who had no future. If they still followed her wholeheartedly, then she would do her best to find a good home for them. If they had other thoughts, then they should leave as soon as possible and go their separate ways. All of you go out. Madam was still outside. Wouldn't it be asking for trouble if they left Miss out at this time? It turns out that you are serving me on the surface, but in fact, you are just listening to my mother's words? Sun Yijia said softly enough for the maids to hear. They wanted to hurriedly deny it, but their master did not give them a chance to speak. Get out. She flipped the table. Seeing that Sun Yijia was angry, they were all frightened. The wet nurse was the calmest. To put it bluntly, she had raised Sun Yijia as her own daughter. When Sun Yijia suffered, she felt more distressed than anyone else. Even if her temperament had changed greatly now, she thought it was reasonable. Without saying anything, she took the lead to crouch down and leave. With someone taking the lead, the other maids felt as if they had been pardoned. It was still the same saying that it was terrible when a person who was not angry suddenly became angry. Sun Yijia used Jingwan to block the view of the people outside and blinked at Jingwan. Did I pretend well? Jingwan poked her forehead. You know it in your heart. Don't wait for me to expose you. It was normal for a person to become gloomy, irritable, or ruthless when they encountered a big change. Jingwan actually agreed with Sun Yijia's decision to cover herself with such a layer of protection. As the saying goes, the soft is afraid of the hard is afraid of the reckless is afraid of the unreasonable, and the unreasonable is afraid of the reckless. As long as Sun Yijia was willing to risk everything, how many people in Ding General Manor were willing to risk their lives? Probably none. In this way, she could be the king of Ding General Manor. Who would dare to humiliate her? However, this also needed a process. Sun Yijia was not a person who could act. When she confronted her mother before, if she did not have real feelings as the foundation and burst out her inner thoughts, she could not achieve the effect if she just pretended. Her fourth sister-in-law was purely a bitch who was asking for a beating. Sun Yijia's eyes dimmed. Sister Wan, I'm very sad. I'm really sad. You knew this from the beginning. Now you just exposed it. After being sad, life will go on as usual. Sister Wan, you're so heartless. Sun Yijia's sadness was ruthlessly dispersed by Jingwan, so she looked at her with an accusing face. That's not it. There are more heartless things to come. So, if you don't want to be hurt by my ruthlessness, stay away from me as soon as possible. But I've been trapped in your gentleness and can't extricate myself. Even if you suddenly become ruthless, I've decided not to marry for the rest of my life and to rely on you for the rest of my life. What does your marriage have to do with relying on me for the rest of your life? However, Jingwan suddenly thought that Sun Yijia's idea could be realized. She could marry into Ding General Manor. Looking at Sun Yijia's expression, she seemed to. Don't think too much. I'm serious. Sister Wan, you know what I mean, right? My fifth brother, he. Jingwan pressed a finger on her lips. Your mother is already here. I think people from the Luo family should also be here. I'll go back and take a look. What you need to do now is to obediently recover from your injuries. Eat and sleep as you should. When you return to the capital, you won't have a peaceful life. Sun Yijia saw that Jingwan was firm and knew that there was no point in continuing to persuade her. I'll walk you out. Okay. Jingwan didn't forget to roll up the paper she had written before and put it in her sleeve to take away. The two of them walked out arm in arm. The people who were whispering in the courtyard immediately shut their mouths and secretly looked over. It was obvious that they were talking bad about her just now. Sun Yijia carried her noble and cold demeanor. Compared to before, she was no longer cold when looking at people. Instead, she was gloomy. Mother, Sister Jia's temper is not good now. Not only did she hit people, but she also smashed things. If outsiders know about it, I don't know what they will say about our Ding general manner. Sun Yijia's fourth sister-in-law still had red marks on her face. Obviously, the two slaps just now made her resentment and hatred almost to the sky. Enough. If it weren't for your mouth, would Yijia have hit you? You'd better behave yourself in the future, or I'll have someone slap you directly. Duchess Ding looked at her coldly. Her mouth not only implicated her daughter, but also her most outstanding son. Sure enough, she was too tolerant in daily life, so they dared to be so unscrupulous. She was just the daughter-in-law of a concubine's son. How dare she try to climb over her daughter? However, she had a good-looking sister-in-law. Did she think that without her daughter above her, that little B***TCH could stand out? She was really too stupid. She was actually compromised by a few words from the Duke. Whatever concubine's daughter, she was still her daughter. As long as she married well, she could be of help to her son and also to the Empress. But the fact was, nothing had happened yet, and she was so arrogant that she dared to step on her daughter in front of her. If those B***cheese of a concubine really got up, who knew how arrogant they would be? They enjoyed everything her daughter had and even turned around to bite her daughter. In that case, why should she help them up? B***cheese would be B***cheese for a lifetime. Considering that they were also the Duke's daughters, she was already very kind to them by not letting them be like their B***tch concubine. Under her nose, they wanted to climb up the social ladder? They wanted to replace her daughter? In their dreams. As daughters-in-law, they had been scolded by their mother-in-law before. But at this moment, her mother-in-law seemed to be colder than before. Sun Yijia's sister-in-law couldn't help shivering and didn't dare to speak again. But her lowered eyes contained deep hatred. She deserved it. She ran into Sun Yilin. Since Sun Yilin cared about Jingwan, he naturally wouldn't let others bully her. Although he didn't go in, he heard everything that happened in the room just now. The situation didn't allow him to do so, so he restrained himself. But it didn't mean that he couldn't deal with a sister-in-law who was dispensable in his eyes. As long as he insulted himself a little, his mother would trample that so-called sister-in-law to death. Don't blame him for being despicable and shameless. He was even more calculative with a woman. A man who couldn't even protect the person he liked. Could he still be considered a real man? What's more, Duchess Ding, who had been provoked by her children, was helpless in front of them. The others were just right for her to vent her anger. Whoever ran into them first would die. Yijia. In the blink of an eye, Duchess Ding became a loving mother again, but she didn't know what to say to Sun Yijia now. Sun Yijia curled the corners of her mouth sarcastically. She was used to seeing her mother flaunt her power. It was the first time that her mother protected her so unabashedly when she did something wrong. Mother, you are very familiar with this place. Help yourself. I'll send Sister Wan away first. Her daughter, who used to be well-behaved and obedient, suddenly seemed to have changed into a different person. Her words were always harsh and sarcastic. No one would feel good in their heart. However, because of this, Duchess Ding thought that her actions had hurt her daughter's heart. Instead, she cared more about her daughter's thoughts. Duchess Ding glanced at Jingwan. She now had very complicated feelings about Jingwan. Her children's hearts had been hooked by her. Such a person probably didn't want her to be her daughter-in-law. If her son was partial to his daughter-in-law in everything, it would be strange if she, as a mother, felt good. But now the situation was that her son protected her and even threatened to marry no one but her. Her daughter needed her and didn't give a good face to anyone except her. As a mother, she had to put her aside. She was even more terrible than those seductive vixens. Jingwan felt that Duchess Ding's eyes were getting weirder and weirder. Did something happen that she didn't know about? Sister Jia, you don't have to send me off. Have a good talk with your mother. How can there be overnight hatred between mother and daughter? If you keep it in your heart, you'll never be able to get the right answer. However, your mother is different. She has decades of experience and has seen many things. Even if your thoughts aren't accepted by the world, she's the one who gave birth to you after carrying you for 10 months. You're her flesh and blood. Naturally, she won't be heartless and ignore your feelings. She'll give you her opinion, and even if it's not what you want, she'll still be able to guide you. It'll be beneficial for your entire life. Sun Yijia didn't expect that before leaving, Jingwan could still say such words. This was not only said to her, but also to her mother. It would be a lie to say that she wasn't grateful. No daughter wanted to quarrel with her parents like they were enemies. This was not only a matter of filial piety, but also a relationship of more than 10 years. How could she give it up so easily? Jingwan also saw this point, so she said such words. Moreover, with the protection of Duchess Ding, Sun Yijia's life would be much better. Well, I'll go first. Jingwan patted her hand and bowed to Duchess Ding. Goodbye. Duchess Ding was both shocked and touched. Her impression of Jingwan changed again, becoming more and more complicated and indescribable. They didn't look away until Jingwan disappeared from their sight and then looked at each other at the same time. Sun Yijia was still a little angry and turned her face away awkwardly. Yijia, are you really going to treat me like this all the time? I know I'm wrong and I've wronged you, but fortunately, it hasn't happened yet. There's still a chance to change. Won't you even give me this chance? I promise you that those things won't happen. You're still the most honorable legitimate daughter of Duke Ding's mansion. You're the apple of my eye. No one can belittle you. Yijia, Duchess Ding said and reached out to pull her. Sun Yijia hesitated for a while. Finally, she couldn't help but throw herself into Duchess Ding's arms and cry uncontrollably. Mother! Don't cry, don't cry. Be careful of the wound. Duchess Ding kept comforting her, but she also made her cry. The mother and daughter cried together, and the servants also shed tears, but some of them almost tore the handkerchief in their hands. The current situation was definitely not what they wanted to see. If they didn't trample on Sun Yijia, how could they seek benefits? However, in the face of Duchess Ding, they were helpless. As the culprit, Jingwan was naturally hated. The third miss of the Luo family is really extraordinary. At such a young age, her wisdom and insight are really shameful. The second sister-in-law of the Sun family, who had always been taciturn, said to her eldest sister-in-law, "The first time I saw her, I felt that this girl was far beyond her peers. Now it seems that I have underestimated her. Eldest sister-in-law, if she enters the gate of Duke Ding's mansion, she will be a big threat to you." Although they didn't hear what Sun Yilin's mother-in-law and uncle said before, they, who had been paying attention to them, caught Sun Yilin's occasional look. Same to you. Digression. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652959. HTML. Click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. Please wait patiently after reporting and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version reading website. Bicken.com. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.